Chapter 606. If I don't wake up, I'll really die in there. Jiang Chen was shocked, but he was also scared. Jiang Chen needed to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. The small world in front of him was undoubtedly the best choice. Is glittering jewel Wetian inside? Jiang Chen asked. How would I know? Mu Yude said angrily. He frowned and guessed. I don't think he's in there. If he was, he wouldn't have come out until now. His lifespan would have been exhausted, and he would have died long ago. That's right, Jiang Chen murmured. Then where was glittering jewel Wentian on the third mountain? Could it be in the cave? Jiang Chen suddenly narrowed his eyes. If his guess was right, then his and Yan Chang's bodies. That's impossible, Mu Yude murmured. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He didn't dare to think further. After all, if glittering jewel Wentian was really in the cave, then Jiang Chen and Yan Chang's bodies would be in danger. The consequences, the karma, and the implications were too great. It's not a big deal for me. At worst, I'll lose a body, but if Yan Chang'e loses her true body, then… Jiang Chen's heart was in his mouth. He was worried for Yan Chang'e. Mu Yude was also anxious. If something happened to Yan Chang'e's body, her master, Taoist Tong Tian, would do it. At that time, Mu Yude would be dead. Soon, it will be the night of the full moon in 5 days. Mu Yude's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He prayed that nothing would happen to the two bodies in the cave. At this moment, Jiang Chen was too lazy to think about it. What else could he do? Do you think I can go in? Jiang Chen stared at the stone tablet. His heart was pounding. This was a great opportunity to improve his cultivation. If he could wake up, it would mean that he had cultivated for several years. Even if he couldn't, he could at least improve his cultivation level. What if he can't wake up? Mu Yude asked. Can't wake up? Jiang Chen whispered and smiled bitterly. If I can't wake up, then so be it. What else can I do? With my current cultivation, even if I go out now, I'll only die. I might as well take a gamble here. With that, Jiang Chen paused for a moment before asking. The third mountain doesn't seem that dangerous. Not dangerous? Mu Yude's eyes widened. How was this not dangerous? How many people could withstand 3 moves from a demigod? Even if they did, how many of them would be able to pass through the soul-assimilating array? And after the soul-absorbing array, there were still restrictions. Behind the restrictions, there were even more dangers. The main reason Jiang Chen was able to enter the third mountain this time was because the demigod guarding the mountain did not want to see Jiang Chen destroy the restrictions. Therefore, he had kicked him up. If it was anyone else, they would probably be dead by now. As for Mu Yude, he had been here before and had used some tricks. Otherwise, how could he enter this place so easily? One had to know that when the demigod guarding the mountain saw Mu Yude, his face had darkened. Other dangers aside, just the dangers on the mountain top alone are enough to take your life. Mu Yude said in a low voice. On the night of the full moon, a special Tao will appear here. It is a destructive force. Even the gods might not be able to withstand it. That means, in 5 days, the most dangerous time will arrive? Jiang Chen was dumbfounded. That meant, he could either leave this place now, enter the cave, or enter the small world inside the stone tablet. Other than that, there was no other way. I will enter the cave on the night of the full moon and come out on the next full moon. Why don't you come with me? Mu Yude said. What's in the cave? Jiang Chen was curious. The cave looked extraordinary. There had to be something good inside. However, when he remembered that Mu Yude had entered the cave before, Jiang Chen did not think much of it. How could there be anything good left in a place like that? If the third mountain could be taken away, Mu Yude would have taken the entire mountain with him. There are many things inside, but I can't take them away, Mu Yude mumbled. I've already taken everything that I can, what's left inside? Jiang Chen pursed his lips. He had guessed that Mu Yude had destroyed the cave. The third mountain was known as a forbidden area. One could only enter, but not leave. However, who would have thought that Muyude had not only entered it, but it was also not his first time. Moreover, he had taken away many treasures inside the cave. There's a tablet, a futon, and a scroll. There's nothing else, Muyude said. Those 3 things can't be taken away. Someone has branded them there. Is there anything special about those 3 things? Jiangchen asked. The thing that was imprinted here was definitely extraordinary. However, Muyude had observed them before, but he could not find anything special about them. In Muyude's eyes, anything that could not be taken away was trash. Anything that did not belong to him was not considered trash. They're just trash. Don't worry about them, Muyude said. Then, I'll enter the small world inside the tablet, Jiangchen said. I'll adjust myself first. 5 days later, on the night of the full moon, you enter the cave, and I'll enter the small world inside the tablet. Think about it carefully, Muyude said in a low voice. Jiangchen's current lifespan was about 60,000 years. 60,000 years of lifespan might seem like a lot, but in the world of cultivators, it was not much. Especially in the small world inside the tablet, it was like a few pieces of firewood that could burn out at any time. I still have some rare treasures with me that can replenish my blood qi and increase my lifespan. I'll eat them all, Jiangchen said. My lifespan will reach more than 100,000 years. I hope you can wake up, Muyude mumbled. I'll give you 1,000,000 years of lifespan, but what's the point if you can't wake up? In the end, the 2 of them did not say anything else and prepared themselves. 5 days later, on this day, a layer of purple mist appeared in the sky above the 3rd mountain. Obscure runes flickered in the purple mist like purple stars. The runes were very bright and emitted an extremely violent aura. Just as Muyude had said, on the night of the full moon on the 3rd mountain, this place would be filled with the destructive power of the Great Path. And these runes were the embodiment of the destructive power of the Great Path. It's fine during the day, but when the moon rises, these runes will fall like the stars, Muyude said in a low voice. Muyude said in a deep voice. When the time comes, you'll be able to enter by touching the stone tablet, but I'll have to hurry. If I can't enter the cave when the runes fall, I'll be finished. You've already entered once. Can't you enter a second time? Who are you trying to fool? Jiangchen squinted and said coldly. If anything happens to the body inside, I'll skin you alive and throw you into the river of forgetfulness. Chapter 607. Time passed, and night finally fell on the 3rd mountain. The moment the moon rose, Jiangchen pressed his palm against the stone steel without hesitation. Instantly, a terrifying pulling force erupted, dragging Jiangchen into the little world of the stone steel. Muyude saw all of this, and a strange expression appeared on his face. He touched his chest and asked himself, Does your conscience hurt? Muyude had been here once, and he had been here even earlier than Linlang Wetian. At that time, Muyude was in seclusion in the cave, and his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. After that, he came out and entered the blood path. What he didn't tell Jiangchen was that not long after he entered the cave, he sensed that someone had also entered the 3rd mountain and entered the little world of the stone steel. That person was most likely Linlang Wetian. It's been so many years. Linlang Wetian must have died in there, Muyude muttered. If you really find Linlang Wetian alive in there, I'll burn some incense for you and dig a grave for you. I'll definitely bury you properly. With that, Muyude deactivated the spell formation outside the cave and charged inside. Buzz! A few breaths later, the entire 3rd mountain trembled, and a destructive power of the great Tao erupted, causing a purple mist to rise. It was a purplish hue that looked like hell, and it seemed to be stained with blood. The destructive power landed on the 3rd mountain, but it couldn't destroy a single blade of grass or tree. If one looked closely, they would see that the power had entered the mountain. The faceless man raised his head and looked at the purple mist that filled the sky. He whispered, Master, when will you be born? There was no doubt that there was a living being in the 3rd mountain, and it was extremely powerful. This living being had been in the third mountain since ancient times, absorbing the destructive power of the great Tao. It was unknown whether it was cultivating or transforming. In any case, the third mountain had become a forbidden area because of this living being. In the past, the godless continent had experienced a few dark upheavals. The deities of the heavens had descended, and the kings of the other lands had come. However, none of them had entered the third mountain. Even during the darkest era, the third mountain was still as peaceful as ever. It was easy to imagine the reason behind this. Both the deities and the kings of the other lands were extremely wary of the living being in the third mountain. Where is this place? At this moment, in the small world of the stone tablet, Jiang Chun looked at the scenery in front of him in a daze. Looking around, this place was very small. There was only a lake, and beside the lake was a pavilion. Other than that, there was nothing else. This place looked ordinary, but what was so special about it? Why are there still people here? Suddenly, Jiang Chen's eyes narrowed as he saw a middle-aged man sitting cross-legged in the pavilion. His life aura was very weak, but his entire body was emitting divine light, and there was even a wisp of divine aura pervading the air. This was a demigod. No one has ever stepped into this place since ancient times, right? Jiang Chen muttered. Then, a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He roared in a deep voice. Mu Yud! You tricked me! Jiang Chen was not stupid. In a place like this, who else could it be other than Lin Langwen Tian? However, Jiang Chen did not expect Mu Yud to trick him. Why didn't he tell him about this in advance? Fortunately, Lin Langwen Tian's current state was not quite right. It was as if he was dead and did not notice Jiang Chen's arrival at all. Moreover, although Lin Langwen Tian had broken through to become a demigod, his lifespan had decreased sharply and was almost exhausted. After so many years, he still has some lifespan left. Jiang Chen was shocked. How strong was Lin Langwen Tian when he was at his peak? How strong was the blood qi in his body? Otherwise, how could he have lasted until now? However, it seemed that Lin Langwen Tian would not wake up. I'll send you on your way, Jiang Chen said softly, and a cold smile appeared on his face. There was a battle after all. With such a good opportunity in front of him, how could Jiang Chen not make a move? However, before Jiang Chen could make a move, a ripple appeared on the surface of the lake. After the ripple spread, a blurry figure slowly rose from the surface of the lake. Like a ghost, he floated over and slowly landed in front of Jiang Chen. An ancient yet mysterious aura filled the air. What do you want? Without waiting for Jiang Chen to speak, the creature stared at Jiang Chen and asked directly. Ah? Jiang Chen was stunned. Were all creatures nowadays so direct? He was embarrassed. Of course I want to become stronger, Jiang Chen said snappily. Otherwise, who would be willing to burn their lifespan to come here? I have 3,000 cultivation methods here, all of which are supreme techniques. 3,000 Dao skills, all of which are supreme techniques. You can choose at will. Once you're done, you can leave, the blurry creature said. After saying that, he waved his hand. 3,000 cultivation methods and 3,000 Dao skills were neatly arranged in front of Jiang Chen. At this moment, Jiang Chen was a little confused. Putting aside these cultivation methods, just these 3,000 Dao skills were enough to shake the entire world, right? One had to know that even in the Nine Heavens divine realm, there probably weren't so many Dao skills, right? Are you playing with me? How can there be so many Dao skills? Jiang Chen squinted, feeling that this creature was like a liar. If you don't believe me, take a look and you'll know. The creature smiled and said, The world is ignorant, how can they know my methods? I'll take a look then. Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows and casually picked a book. Then, Jiang Chen's eyes widened because the Dao skill he picked was the little 6 fingers that he cultivated. This could be a coincidence. Maybe you know that I cultivate the little 6 fingers. Jiang Chen did not believe in evil and picked a few books in succession. In the end, Jiang Chen was shocked. It was all because when he carefully observed and comprehended them, he confirmed that they were all genuine Dao skills. There are even cultivation methods here, more powerful than any cultivation method in the world today," the creature said. "Pick a cultivation method, 3 Tao skills, and you can leave." "So good?" Jiangchun was moved and subconsciously asked. "Is there a lacking earth formula?" Pfft. As soon as these words came out, the creature staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at Jiangchun. His eyes were like 2 lanterns. He stared at Jiangchun. After a good while, he said in a muffled voice, "Can such a thing really exist? Cultivation methods, I only want the lacking earth formula. Since there are none here, what am I picking?" Jiangchun said unhappily. "There are quite a lot of them, but none of them are suitable for me. This is the Great Yen Tian formula, the #1 cultivation method in the ancient times. This is the Heaven and Earth Heart Sutra, the #3 cultivation method in the ancient times. This is the #9 cultivation method in the dark years, the Immortal Formula." The creature seemed to be angry and took out a few cultivation methods and said, "Aren't these cultivation methods stronger than the one you're cultivating now?" Chapter 608. Big brother, are you stupid? I'm not here to choose a cultivation technique or a Tao technique. I'm here to... Jiangchun had a strange expression as he muttered, "I'm here to sleep. It's written clearly on the stone tablet outside, Dream of 3000. Jiangchun said. "Oh. I know, you're trying to take a shortcut." The creature seemed to be enlightened. He pointed at Lin Langwetian in the pavilion and said, "You want to be like him? Reincarnation in the dream? Reincarnation in the dream?" Jiangchun asked curiously. "In the dream, you'll experience several reincarnations and different lives. If you can wake up from the dream of several reincarnations, then the cultivation you've cultivated in those lives will fuse together and fuse with your current life," the creature said. Yes, that's what I want." Jiangchun nodded hurriedly. "You can't, right?" The creature curled his lips and said disdainfully, "Do you know how long he had when he entered this place? A full 1,360,000 years." "What?" Jiangchun's heart twitched a few times. 1,360,000 years. What kind of concept was that? Even a god couldn't live that long, right? How did Lin Langwetian do it? Could it be that he took the elixir of immortality? Or the elixir of immortality? Otherwise, how could he have such a long lifespan before becoming a god? Your mere 10 years of lifespan can at most be reincarnated 3 times in the dream," the creature said. "Even if you can wake up, what's the use of reincarnating 3 times? The power of 3 reincarnations can at most raise your cultivation to the 4th or 5th decay of the celestial being." "That's enough," Jiangchun whispered. "As long as I have the 4th decay of the celestial being, I have the confidence to fight against a demigod. If I reach the 5th decay of the celestial being, even a demigod might not be able to suppress me." "But what if you can't wake up?" the creature asked. "Can't wake up?" Jiangchun frowned and shook his head. "I've never thought about it. If I can't wake up, so be it. What else can I do? Life will pass just like that. You really don't want these? You would rather risk your life?" this creature asked. "What do I need these for? If this is the general trend, I can accept it. But now, I have no other choice but to quickly improve my cultivation," Jiangchun said in a low voice, his heart filled with infinite helplessness. If he had enough time, why would Jiangchun take the risk? If Jiangchun had enough time, he would be able to practice peacefully. One day, he would be able to return to his peak state. But now, was he given the time? "Since you've already decided, then you can go on your way," this creature said softly. He pointed at the pavilion and said, "Once you enter, you can sleep. However, whether or not you can wake up after this sleep is up to you." Then Jiangchun looked at Lin Langwetian, wishing he could kill him right there and then. However, this living being told Jiangchun that there was a restriction here. Otherwise, they would be obliterated by the rules here. "Sooner or later, I'll kill him with my own hands," Jiangchun said coldly. Finally, Jiangqun came to the front of the pavilion. However, he suddenly turned around and looked at the mysterious living being. He asked, "Who are you?" "Me? Of course, I'm the owner of this place." This living being smiled and said, "In all 8 directions, only I reign supreme." "Ha! You're bluffing." Jiangqun curled his lips. When the time came for him to reign supreme, would he still be here? Moreover, this living being's current state was obviously not right. It was like a broken soul. In such a state, he still claimed to reign supreme? T. Seeing that Jiangqun did not believe him, this living being smiled and did not explain further. Then, Jiangqun stepped forward and entered the pavilion. Not too long ago, the only person who could compete against me actually ended up in such a state. The vicissitudes of time truly make one unable to fathom life. The creature let out a long sigh. His figure gradually dimmed until he disappeared. At this moment, after Jiangqun entered the pavilion, a wave of sleepiness attacked him. Then, he fell into a deep sleep and underwent the so-called reincarnation in the dream. At the same time, in the outside world, on the godless continent, the 18 families had recently made a move again. After they ruled the underworld and the barren state, they began to move towards the Zhongzhou dynasty. During this period, all the sects, families, and forces they passed by either surrendered or were destroyed. Finally, a month later, on this day, outside the imperial city of the Zhongzhou dynasty, the top experts of the 18 families all gathered here. Behind them were not only array masters, boundary masters, but also restriction masters. There were also countless generals and traders who had pledged allegiance to the 18 families. Looking around, there were more than 10,000 people outside the imperial city. Moreover, their cultivation levels were not low. The weakest was at the upper level of the immortal state. Now on the godless continent, there are not many forces that still have the strength to struggle. Apart from the Jiang family, the martial pavilion, upper and lower universe, and highest heaven, only your Zhongzhou dynasty is left. Amongst the strong cultivators of the 18 clans, the leader of the group smiled coldly and said, "Today, we're going to destroy the central continent's dynasty. Tomorrow, we're going to destroy the martial pavilion. We're going to destroy the continent of the 9 clouds. They are just a bunch of traitors. They have been trapped on the path of blood for so many years and still don't know how to repent." Li Fingzi stood on the city wall, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Li Fingzi. Now that the general trend is irresistible, the Zhongzhou dynasty can't stop the footsteps of the 18 families. I advise you to quickly surrender to avoid being exterminated. A sect leader who had surrendered to the Zhongzhou dynasty shouted. You are just a young boy. It is already a great fortune to be able to sit on the throne of the emperor. Today, if you surrender, you will still be the emperor of the Zhongzhou dynasty. Li Fingzi, surrender. The 18 families will unify the godless continent sooner or later. We are powerless to resist. We can only surrender. Many people persuaded. There were even elders of sects who were on good terms with the Zhongzhou dynasty who stood out, hoping that Li Fingzi would surrender. However, Li Fingzi was full of smiles. He slowly turned around and his gaze fell on the distant third mountain. If he returns, the world will be peaceful, Li Fingzi whispered. After saying this, Li Fingzi turned around again and looked at the enemies in front of him. He said, "The battlefield of the Zhongzhou dynasty is not here." "What do you mean?" "What?" Everyone was puzzled. The army had already arrived at the imperial city. Was this not the battlefield? Just as everyone was puzzled, a tremor sounded out of nowhere. Then, everyone saw a huge teleportation formation appear in the sky above the imperial city. When the teleportation formation appeared, formations and barriers were formed. There were even restrictions that appeared and sealed off the entire imperial city. In the next moment, under everyone's horrified gaze, the entire imperial city rose from the ground and entered the teleportation formation as if the entire clan was ascending. If I have the chance to return one day, the Li clan will still have the final say in the Zhongzhou dynasty. The Zhongzhou dynasty hasn't been destroyed. It's just that today, We have to go on an expedition. The date of return is uncertain. Li Fengzi said. Imperial Draconic, she surrounded his body. He wore a crown on his head and held an ancient true dragon sword in his hand. He left a final impression on the world. Perhaps he was the last emperor of the Zhongzhou dynasty. Perhaps he wasn't the strongest emperor of the Zhongzhou dynasty. But at least today, he didn't surrender. Chapter 609. The sky was filled with multicolored light. The huge teleportation array collided with the void, and a space-time passageway appeared like a divine bridge. The entire imperial city rose from the ground and entered the space-time passageway under everyone's gaze. The dynasty had disappeared in the end. Some people were puzzled. Where did the Central State dynasty go? Would they come back in the future? Some people were shocked. What kind of method was this to move the entire Central State dynasty away? Of course, there were also people who were excited and even happy. This group of people were from the 18 families. They knew where the Central State dynasty had gone. Naturally, it was the Eternal City. The Eternal City has issued an alliance order. It seems like it can't hold on anymore. Great! The Eternal City has been broken. When we open the door of darkness, we will cooperate with the outside. Not to mention the godless continent, the entire 9 heavens divine world will have to submit to the Spirit Clan. The Spirit Clan! They are the supreme beings of the world. They should have unified the 6 realms and 6 paths. The 18 families were extremely excited. The creatures of the foreign land were called the Spirit Clan. Continue to advance. Next target, the Martial Pavilion. The 18 families were majestic. Without the obstruction of the Central State dynasty, they occupied the entire Central State. As for the Central State, it was connected to the entire godless continent. Now, they could go wherever they wanted to go without any obstruction. However, when they arrived at the Martial Pavilion, they found that the entire pavilion had disappeared. There was no one left in the Martial Pavilion. Even the mountain gate had disappeared. In the sky above the Martial Pavilion, the void had not yet closed. They could vaguely see a huge teleportation array still rotating. Ha! Looks like the Eternal City can't hold on anymore. Within a day, the Central State Dynasty and the Martial Pavilion have been teleported to the Eternal City. The heavens are helping us. Without the Central State Dynasty and the Martial Pavilion, who can stop the 18 families in this world? Everyone laughed wildly. They were extremely arrogant. They saw the hope of victory. No! To be exact, in the eyes of the 18 families, victory had always belonged to them. Only the Jiang family, the 9 heavens, and the upper and lower Qianquan sect are left. Other than them, there are no other sects in this world that can compete with us. Who should we choose next? The upper echelons of the 18 families were discussing, but it was hard for them to make a decision. The Qianquan sect and the upper and lower Qianquan sect were the same. Once a battle broke out, it would be a battle against the 2 top sections. On the other hand, the Jiang clan was known as a clan with the inheritance of a deity. They had a very deep foundation, and they couldn't start a war at will. In that case, the best place to start a war right now would be the 9 clouds heavens. However, the continent of the 9 clouds had always been mysterious. They rarely showed themselves, so nobody knew how deep the continent of the 9 clouds was. But now, looking at the situation on the surface, 9 clouds heaven was indeed the easiest to bully. Besides, the continent of the 9 clouds wasn't far from the Martial Pavilion. It was in a small world. Let's go to the continent of the 9 clouds. Finally, the leaders of the 18 clans came to a decision. Their next target was the 9 clouds heavens. That day, godless continent's creatures were terrified, their hearts incomparably cold. The Central Plains Empire and the Martial Pavilion had left. Now only the 9 Clouds sect, the upper and lower Qianquan sect, and the Jiang family were left. If these 4 forces did not join forces, how could they resist the 18 families? But what was surprising was that when the 18 families arrived outside the continent of the 9 Clouds heavens, the upper and lower Qianquan sect and the Jiang family did not help. For a moment, many people sighed. The godless continent was at the brink of destruction. What were these sects still worried about? Were they still unwilling to join forces? The godless continent's momentum is gone. Someone looked up at the sky and sighed, his heart filled with sorrow. Some people even thought of the flowing sky world. In the future, would the godless continent also become like the flowing sky world, broken and become a broken world? What's more, from now on, there would be no godless continent. Retreat! Oh no! However, half a day later, someone used a secret technique to see the scene outside the continent of the 9 clouds heavens. The expressions of the powerhouses of the 18 families changed drastically, and they quickly left with a group of subordinates. At the same time, in the continent of the 9 clouds, an old man stood above the mountain gate. When he opened and closed his eyes, there seemed to be fragments of the great path flowing in them. His eyes were like the sea, and his pupils were like stars, illuminating the entire continent of the 9 clouds. A demigod! There's a demigod in the continent of the 9 clouds! Many people were astonished. They were extremely excited. They had thought that the continent of the 9 clouds was going to be destroyed. They had thought that the godless continent was going to be destroyed. They had never thought that the continent of the 9 clouds would have such a strong foundation. A bunch of traitors! Shouted the demigod of the continent of the 9 clouds at the top of the mountain. Then, his silhouette disappeared. On that day, a terrifying battle occurred in the direction of the underworld continent. 2 demigods were fighting fiercely. Without a doubt, the demigod of the continent of the 9 clouds was extremely aggressive and extraordinary. He directly went to the underworld continent and started fighting with the demigod of the 18 families. This battle lasted for a long time, a total of 10 days. 10 days later, the demigod of the continent of the 9 clouds was covered in blood and disappeared into an empty space. The demigod of the 18 families had half of his body broken and was in a coffin. The godless continent will be destroyed sooner or later! Shouted one of the demigods in the coffins of the 18 families. He was still awake, so he couldn't fight. The other demigod hadn't fully recovered, so his fighting strength wasn't at its peak. He was also injured. It would take a long time for him to come out. The Wangchuan River is the border. The south of the Wangchuan River is the godless continent. The north of the Wangchuan River is the north of the Wangchuan River. What do you think? Said the demigod of the continent of the 9 clouds. When he said that, the people of the world were moved. Everyone understood what he meant. The continent of the 9 clouds was afraid. They couldn't destroy the 18 families. They just wanted to protect half of the godless continent. Are you qualified to talk about conditions with us? Heh! What a joke! The godless continent will be ours, said the 2 demigods. They didn't agree. However, at that moment, the barbarian king appeared in the world. He stood in the air, his godly aura was vast and mighty. Above his head, a passage to the godly world of the 9 clouds appeared. It was the passage that led to his ascension. Now, he was going to ascend and become a real god. However, the barbarian king formed a hand seal and suppressed the godly power in his body. He raised his head and looked at the passage. He laughed wildly and said, I, the barbarian king, will not become a god! Boom! As soon as he said that, the barbarian king broke the passage with a punch, cutting off the path of ascension. Why? Ancestor! Why are you doing this? You've been cultivating for countless years. Now that the path to becoming a god has been opened, why don't you go? Everyone in the barbarian race was moved. Some people sighed. They knew why the barbarian king was doing this. It was for the godless continent. It was for the entire barbarian race. Chapter 610. I was born at the wrong time, but it's what I am now, the barbarian king murmured. Henceforth, I'll fight to the death with the 2 demigods of your 18 clans. With the river of forgetfulness as the boundary, the godless continent will be to the south, and the holy ones to the north. The barbarian king's threat caused the 18 clans to bow their heads and agree to the terms of the demigod from the highest heavens. Furthermore, they called themselves the Holy Ones. What was holy? Holy and flawless, pure and untainted. How shameless is this? How dare these traitors call themselves the Holy Ones? I hate them. If the godless continent had a few more demigods, these traitors wouldn't be so arrogant. Of course, in such a situation, becoming a demigod was already an impressive feat. In fact, under normal circumstances, there was no such thing as a demigod. For example, the barbarian king had cut off his path to godly ascension, and only then had he become a demigod. As for the demigod from the highest heavens, he had been a survivor of the ancient epic, and had become a demigod back then. But now, he couldn't. Therefore, it was easier said than done to create a few more demigods. In fact, it was almost impossible. Master, are you really not going to make a move? Meanwhile, back in the Heaven-Span God Temple, Nyen Changa was looking at Taoist Heaven-Span suspiciously. Given the level of Taoist Heaven-Span's cultivation base, even a true god would have to kneel before him, much less a demigod. And yet, for some reason, Taoist Heaven-Span had never made a move. The world isn't as simple as you think. Taoist Heaven-Span sighed. If I make a move, someone else will. When the time comes, this war won't just be a small squabble between a few demigods. It'll involve even more powerful experts. There's actually a living being in this world who can stand up to you, Master? Nyen Changa said in shock and disbelief. When have I ever been invincible? Taoist Heaven-Span said with a wry smile. I've never been invincible, and I've never been defeated. There will always be opponents in this world. Well, what if the godless continent really falls? Nyen Changa asked. That will be the fate of the godless continent, Taoist Heaven-Span said. Fate is something that you can't see clearly, or understand. Hope that someone can change it. Heavenly defying fate? Nyen Changa asked. Defying the heavens and changing one's fate? Heh. Which cultivator doesn't defy heaven and change their fate? Pursing his lips, Taoist Heaven-Span continued. I'm talking about changing the current situation. With that, Taoist Heaven-Span looked in the direction of the third mountain, his lips curled into a slight smile. You're pretty patient, you old bag of bones. After all these years, you're still a coward, and you're still practicing your so-called boundless technique. What a joke. What a joke. Suddenly, a furious roar rang out in the sky above the heavenly god palace. Then, an illusory figure appeared. This creature was the creature that had risen from the lake in the stone tablet's small world. Oh my, look at you now, Taoist Heaven-Span said. Are you trying to cultivate, or are you trying to hurt yourself? This sovereign's unmatched divine technique is about to reach the great success stage. At that time, in the heavens above and earth below, only I will reign supreme. This creature was extremely domineering. However, after he finished speaking, he suddenly looked at Nyen Changa and waved his hand. 3,000 cultivation methods and 3,000 Tao techniques appeared before Nyen Changa. He said, Kid, I see that your talent is extraordinary. Why don't you pick a few and inherit my legacy? You're trying to steal my apprentices. Taoist Heaven-Span's face flickered, and his eyes turned bloodshot. Unleashing a palm strike, he sent the creature tumbling backward. You're a master of swindling, you old bag of bones. If you come back to my Heaven-Span God Palace again, I'll flatten your third mountain. TCH. How stingy. The creature vanished into the void, where he said, When that day comes, it's hard to say whether we'll be friends or foes. I'll be looking forward to it. Taoist Heaven-Span said softly. Nyen Changa didn't say anything, and simply stood there in a daze. After all, the conversation between Taoist Heaven-Span and that creature was far beyond anything he could imagine. Furthermore, there was no way he could get a word in edgewise. How are your friends doing? Taoist Heaven-Span asked. In response, Nyen Changa sighed, and his eyes filled with grief. Yes, he had rescued Zate Sang and the others, but it had been too late. And now, there was no way to save them. In fact, it was likely that they would all perish in the near future. Back in the day, they had been so powerful that even the gods in heaven would avoid them. Who could have imagined that they would end up like this? Give them a proper burial. Taoist Heavenspan's expression didn't change in the slightest. Patting Yin Chang'e on the shoulder, he said, "You'll get used to it, Master," Yin Chang'e said, but didn't know what to say. He could sense that Taoist Heavenspan was filled with grief, perhaps even more so than he was. However, Taoist Heavenspan did a good job of concealing that grief. Perhaps Taoist Heavenspan had lost his best friend a long time ago. Time passed. Half a year had passed since Jiangchen had entered the third mountain. During that time, the godless continent and the holy race had never crossed the river of forgetfulness. It was almost as if the fighting had stopped, and the world was at peace. However, the living beings of the godless continent still remembered that the other side of the river of forgetfulness had once been their home. Not good. The forbidden art of God fall. On this day, the barbarian king and the demigods of the highest heaven looked in the direction of the underworld continent, which was shrouded in the color of blood and darkness. A spell formation appeared in the air, accompanied by the howling of 100 ghosts and the appearance of divine Tao magical laws. Divine light fell from the sky, accompanied by a rain of blood. Within the spell formation stood two figures, absorbing the blood and divine light. They're creating gods. Creating demigods. The barbarian king and the demigods of the highest heaven looked extremely serious. This forbidden art had long been lost, and they had never imagined that the holy race would still have people who knew it. This meant that the holy race would be able to produce several demigods in a short time. The godless continent and the holy race were originally evenly matched. But now that the forbidden art of Godfall had appeared, the balance would be broken. When that happened, would the river of forgetfulness's boundary still count? It failed. Those two couldn't withstand the power of the forbidden art. 3 days later, the two figures in the spell formation exploded, turning into a rain of blood. Clearly, using a forbidden art to create gods was very dangerous and difficult to succeed. But if it succeeded, the balance between the two sides would be broken. And since the holy race had used such a forbidden art, it meant that they wouldn't stop until they created demigods. Are there demigods in the Jiang family and the upper and lower Qianquan sect? The demigod of the highest heaven sighed, feeling that there was little hope. If those three sects really had demigods overseeing them, they would have taken action long ago. Why wait until now? In that case, the only demigods on the godless continent who could fight were him and the barbarian king. Chapter 611. The sacred race's methods were extraordinary, and they were even more desperate. They would rather sacrifice their own people to create a demigod. The demigod of the highest heavens sat in the mountain gate. His injuries had yet to recover, so he could only watch the sacred race's actions. He wanted to stop them, but in his current state, it would be futile. He might even lose his life. The most important thing was that even if he lost his life, he might not be able to stop the sacred race. Ha! Not for becoming a god, not for the world, but for the barbarian race to exist on this land for a long time. On this day, all the living beings on the godless continent heard the barbarian king's long roar. A 7-colored cloud danced in the air as the barbarian king stepped out, and a divine light path pierced through the void. His tall and sturdy figure was suffused with divine light as he stepped on the divine light path. Beside him, chanting sounds were like ancient and obscure scriptures. Beneath his feet were golden lotuses. Above his head, a dim divine spark floated. He walked step by step, and with every step, his aura strengthened. After a dozen breaths of time, he crossed half of the godless continent, and arrived at the underworld continent. A group of traitors, today I, the barbarian king, will experience your methods. The barbarian king shouted as he raised his palm and slowly lowered it. Great Tao runes lingered on his palm, and a divine aura erupted. The void was crushed, and even the light of the great Tao was distorted. This palm strike was like a mountain, and it smashed down towards the formation formed by the Skyfall Forbidden technique. Barbarian King! You are courting death. Fine. You will die in the end. Today, I will make you stay here forever. At this moment, the demigod of the sacred race had completely awakened. His blood energy soared into the sky, and the aura of the divine Tao surged. With a raise of his hand, it was as if the sun, moon, and stars were annihilated under his feet. He was too strong. He was a living being from several eras ago. In the past, when he was at his peak, he was no weaker than the gods. He was no weaker than a chief god. If it weren't for the battle in the flowing celestial world, his cultivation wouldn't have fallen to such a level. However, although his cultivation realm had fallen, his Tao heart still existed. He was much more powerful than the average demigod. I have lived for tens of thousands of years, but in front of you, I can only be considered a junior. The barbarian king whispered, his eyes flashing with a fierce light. His palm didn't stop as it continued to press towards the array formation. Since you know you're a member of the junior generation, then where did you get the courage to fight me? The demigod pointed out with his finger. Unexpectedly, it was Little Six Fingers. Little Six Fingers shot out with the power of the six paths, piercing a hole through King Brute's palm. Moreover, this finger seemed to be able to wither everything. After the barbarian king's palm was pierced through, his arm and half of his body rapidly aged, withered, and withered. I, the king of barbarians, am the only one. I want to conquer the world alone. The barbarian king roared. His hair danced in the wind, and his tall and sturdy body grew bigger and bigger. He knew that he was no match for him. At this moment, he burned his Tao fruit and burned his cultivation. He sacrificed the great Tao in exchange for a short period of glory and peak. A few breaths later he did it. It was as if he had transformed into a giant. His aura was comparable to that of a true deity. With a palm strike, he shattered a corner of the array formation. At the same time, a stream of fire burst out from his eyes and pierced through the demigod's body. You're self-destructing. I don't need to do anything. You won't be able to survive today, the demigod said coldly. However, the demigod still wanted to attack. Because if he didn't attack, the array formation would be destroyed. If the array formation was destroyed, it would be difficult for the sacred race to create a god in a short period of time. I, the king of the barbarian race's Tilia clan, have the surname Tuoba and the name Wantian. The barbarian king roared. I don't care about the people of the world. I just want the people of the world to know that we will fight against all enemies. We are not afraid of anyone. Boom! The moment he finished speaking, the barbarian king's entire body burned. He turned into a meteor and crashed into the array formation. With a loud explosion, the sky changed color. A rain of blood fell from the sky, accompanied by a divine light. A divine spark also shattered. The barbarian king self-destructed to destroy the array formation. However, when the rain of blood that filled the sky disappeared, when the divine light dissipated, they saw that the demigod was holding a worn-out umbrella and blocking the array formation. Half of his body was tattered, and even his soul was dim. However, he was laughing. Barbarian king! You can be a god, but you have to self-destruct to die. The demigod laughed wildly. You didn't expect that I have a treasure like the Qiankun umbrella in my hands, right? The Qiankun umbrella was formed from a cloud in the chaos. It was nurtured by heaven and earth and was forged into an umbrella by later generations. The Qiankun umbrella could accommodate and absorb all things. After the barbarian king self-destructed, most of the power that erupted was neutralized by the Qiankun umbrella. As for the rest, some of them struck the array formation, while some of them struck the demigod's body. But no matter what, the demigod was still alive. Although the array formation was incomplete, it could be repaired in a short period of time. Patriarch! Barbarian king! At this moment, the entire barbarian race was in grief. Even the creatures on the godless continent's side, their hearts filled with sorrow. The sects, families, and forces that had grudges against the barbarian race were also sighing. The barbarian king, a person who could become a god, had fallen just like that. His surname is Tuoba, and he's from the 6th clan of the barbarian race. His name is Wangtian. Tuoba Wangtian. This day was remembered by the world, but it was also sad. I'm not the only one left. At this moment, in the mountain gate of the highest heavens, the demigod sighed a few times. He slowly got up and said to a young man beside him, "From now on, the highest heavens will be handed over to you. You've returned from the path of blood, and your cultivation has increased greatly. You can take on this heavy responsibility. Patriarch." "You." The young man's eyes narrowed. He was the saint of the highest heavens that Jiangchen had met on the path of blood. "It's time to go. Burning my last bit of blood can be considered as returning the favor to the godless continent." The demigod sighed. "What can I do when I'm alone? I can only stall for time. Maybe a miracle will happen." "Patriarch, you want to die?" cried the saint of the highest heavens. He hastily shook his head and said, "If you die, there will be no more demigods on the godless continent. What's the difference between having a demigod and not having a demigod in the current situation?" The demigod smiled wryly. "Sometimes, I keep thinking that if Lin Lang Wentian was still alive, maybe the world would still be so peaceful. In the peace, there is a trace of war, a trace of disobedience, and a trace of chaos. But in the end, it's all a war between the native creatures of the godless continent. But now, sigh. I miss that little guy." The demigod sighed deeply. At this moment, who would not have thought of the scene when the martial pavilion had united the godless continent? Unfortunately, it seemed that everything could not go back. Chapter 612. Although the martial pavilion had never truly unified the godless continent, they had the final say in all matters, big and small. But now, the martial pavilion was gone, and Lin Lang Wentian was gone. No sect could stand up and preside over the situation. In the past, many people wanted to overthrow the martial pavilion's rule, but now, many people wanted the martial pavilion to return. Just as the demigod from the highest heavens said, at least when the martial pavilion was still alive, the wars in the world were just small skirmishes. "Let's go." At this moment, the demigod from the highest heavens stood up and tore through the void with his injured body. With the power of a demigod, he arrived in front of the formation in almost an instant. "You dare to come?" The demigod from the sacred clan raised his eyebrows and said contemptuously, "How can you fight me with your injured body? Aren't you the same? You were seriously injured by the barbarian king." The demigod from the highest heavens whispered, "No need to say more. Today, I'm here to die. Then I'll fulfill your wish." The demigod from the sacred clan said, and the Qiankun umbrella in his hand shook out. The void collapsed, and the clouds were sucked in, and even the heaven and earth origin chi in this area disappeared. Divine light flickered on the Qiankun umbrella, and a fist that looked like it was made of gold burst out. The demigod from the highest heavens sighed. Without any hesitation, he burned his body and crashed into it. "Are you all crazy?" the demigod from the sacred clan exclaimed. He didn't bother to put away the Qiankun umbrella and turned to run. The power of a demigod's self-destruction was enough to destroy an area. And now, the demigod from the sacred clan was already seriously injured, and the Qiankun umbrella was incomplete. If he continued to stay, he would definitely die. Boom! After a few breaths, an explosion sounded, and everyone on the godless continent saw a divine light shoot into the sky. It was like the most dazzling fireworks that bloomed in an instant, and then disappeared in an instant. The Qiankun umbrella collapsed, and half of the formation was destroyed, but the demigod was still there. The demigod from the highest heavens was dead, and not even a wisp of ash was left. The godless continent has no more demigods. Why should the sacred clan create another one? The demigod laughed wildly. Even without creating another one, the sacred clan can still unify the godless continent. However, there was a cold glint in the demigod's eyes. He had finally recovered after much difficulty, but he was severely injured one after another. Even his Qiankun umbrella was shattered. Although part of the formation still existed, it would take time to repair it. Most importantly, he wouldn't be able to fight during this period of time. He had to go into seclusion to heal his injuries. Do your best to repair the formation and create a demigod. When my brother and I come out of seclusion, it will be the day that the sacred clan unifies the godless continent, the demigod ordered before entering the coffin. At this moment, the hearts of all living beings on the godless continent were shrouded by a layer of haze. They felt powerless, helpless, and sorrowful. The two remaining demigods of the godless continent were gone just like that. As for the saints, they still existed. Moreover, the saints were still repairing the array formation, and the two demigods were still alive. Who in this world can stop them? Godless continent, is it finally going to fall? Long sighs and howls of anguish rang out continuously. There were even people who were terrified and had thoughts of surrendering. A month later, more than 30 sects on the godless continent had defected and betrayed the godless continent. This chilled even more people's hearts, and made them feel even more helpless. Under such a situation, no one could protect themselves. Perhaps the only way out was to surrender. Fortunately, the saints had yet to make a move. They were repairing the formation and waiting for the two demigods to appear. During this period of time, everything seemed calm. However, everyone knew that this was the calm before the storm. Once this storm arrived, it would cause the godless continent to fall into eternal damnation. Time slowly passed. Everything seemed calm. Only within the third mountain, there would be the sound of bells ringing from time to time, and the aura of gods would fill the air. Within the stone tablet's small world, in the pavilion, Jiangchen and Linlang Wentian sat cross-legged. Both of them had fallen into a deep sleep. In the dream, Jiangchen had no idea what he was doing. He had forgotten himself. He had experienced a lifetime and cultivated to the peak. When his lifespan was exhausted, he continued to reincarnate after death. As he continued to reincarnate in the dream, Jiang Chen's lifespan was also constantly decreasing. Now, he did not have much lifespan left. Looking carefully, Jiang Chen's hair was already gray and wrinkles appeared at the corners of his eyes. His originally tall and straight spine was also bent. At first glance, one would think that he was an old man past his prime. "Heh, looks like you won't wake up." The ethereal being stood on the lake and looked at Jiangchen. He sighed and said, "Looks like this is your last lifetime. The outcome can't be changed. What 10 directions return to 1? It's all fake." The being sighed softly. In this world, there were not many people who knew Jiangchen's true identity. And there were not many people who knew why Jiangchen kept reincarnating. However, anyone who knew what Jiangchen wanted to do. He wanted to transcend. The transcendence that Jiangchen wanted was the dream of all cultivators. However, from ancient times until now, no one had achieved such transcendence. It was also because of that Jiangchen kept reincarnating and cultivating, reincarnating one life after another. 9 is the limit. After this lifetime, you can no longer reincarnate, the being said softly. Actually, I also want to see what you look like when you reincarnate 9 lifetimes and 10 directions return to 1. Unfortunately, time doesn't allow it. Perhaps this is your fate. Suddenly, the being's expression changed and his gaze landed on glittering Jewel Wentian. At this moment, wisps of divine aura were emitted from glittering Jewel Wentian. Moreover, this aura continued to gather, as if 3 flowers were gathering above his head. This was a sign that he was about to condense a divine spark. This kid is really something. He's actually going to become a god on land, the being exclaimed and said. Not bad. Even in the darkest and most glorious era, his aptitude can be considered top-notch. He's awake? About half a month later, the being exclaimed because he saw that glittering jewel when Tian had actually woken up. How many years had he been sleeping here? Just as his lifespan was about to dry up, he actually miraculously woke up. This is... Glittering jewel when Tian opened his eyes. After reincarnating for several lifetimes in the dream, he could not distinguish between reality and fantasy. It was only when he saw the being in front of him that he reacted. I succeeded? Glittering Jewel Wentian was excited. Bells rang in his body, and the divine aura above his head condensed, turning into a divine spark that flickered. You're just a half-god. The being sighed. If you had woken up a little later, you might have really become a god on land. Now it's enough. Glittering Jewel Wentian stood up and said, I'm not one step away from becoming a true god, not even half a step away. Above half-gods and below gods. Chapter 6:13. Above a demigod and below a god. These words were like a joke in the ninth heaven divine world. But in the godless continent, how arrogant and confident were these words. However, this creature teased. Oh? Do you think you're invincible on the godless continent now? Isn't that so? Linlang Wentian was stunned and dumbfounded. Back then, he dominated the godless continent as a Deva fifth decay and made the martial pavilion the leader of the godless continent. Now, he was above a demigod and below a god. With this strength, how could he not be invincible on the godless continent? Do you know the 18 families? They've come out, and now half of the godless continent belongs to them. This creature said. You used to be very strong, but you weren't the strongest. The ancestor of the ninth heaven and the barbarian king of the barbarian tribe, which one of them wasn't stronger than you? It's just that they weren't willing to compete with you. Now, the ancestor of the ninth heaven is dead, and the barbarian king gave up the chance to become a god and died. But now, the strongest is still not you, but the 18 families. At this point, a cold light suddenly burst out from Linlang Wentian's eyes. What? I've been reincarnated here for a few lifetimes, and after I came out, the world changed hands. That group of traitors. Linlang Wentian said in a deep voice. It's them. This creature said mockingly. Why? Do you want to compete with them? Compete? Are they worthy? Linlang Wentian raised her eyebrows, as arrogant as ever. She waved her sleeve and said coldly, They only deserve to die. After saying that, Linlang Wentian glanced at Jiangchen beside her and whispered, If he can wake up, I'll come and find him again. Don't go and die. The creature said. In the darkest and most glorious era, you're considered a top genius. If you die, I'll feel a little heartache. Old thing, although I don't know what you are, but one day I'll surpass all of you and everything in this world. Linlang Wentian said. As soon as she finished speaking, Linlang Wentian's figure flashed and disappeared from the small world of the stone tablet. On this day, everyone on the godless continent watched as a tall, imposing man stepped out from the third mountain. There was a purplish gold path beneath his feet, divine radiance suffused his body, and a divinity that flickered between light and darkness was even floating above his head. This was an existence between a demigod and a true god. He looks so familiar. There seems to be a portrait of this person in my clan. Are you blind? This was Linlang inquires the heavens. He was once the pavilion master of the martial pavilion, and it was because of him that the martial pavilion almost unified the godless continent. He's back? There's hope for this world? At this moment, the living beings on the godless continent were shaken, and they were extremely excited. Linlang Wentian, on the other hand, did not ask or care about anything. He continued to walk forward and did not say a word along the way. He slowly walked along the purple gold path and headed straight for the underworld continent. That brat is out! Taoist Heaven Span was in Heaven Span God Temple, a look of surprise on his face. He really did not expect Linlang Wentian to wake up after experiencing several reincarnations in the dream. That's Linlang Wentian? Nian Chang'e frowned. The person known as the strongest man in this era? He's not the strongest. Taoist Heaven Span pursed his lips. The brute king who died previously was stronger than him, but he gave up the chance to become a god. Then, in his current state, can he fight against the 18 clans? Nian Chang'e asked. He should be able to. Taoist Heaven Span was not sure. He only told Nian Chunga that the current Linlang Wentian was between a demigod and a true god. This cultivation state was much stronger than a demigod. However, among the 18 clans, the 2 demigods were once existences that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the godly king. Now, although their cultivation realm had fallen, their Tao fruits were still there. It would not be easy for Linlang Wentian to defeat the 2 demigods. Boom! Half a day later, when Linlang Wentian stepped into the underworld continent, terrifying explosions of battle could be heard. However, a day later, Linlang Wentian returned, seemingly unharmed. At the same time, there was news from the underworld continent that the godless continent was still bounded by the river of forgetfulness. Linlang Wentian did not win, nor did he lose. But to the godless continent he still lost. Many people sighed. Linlang Wentian was very strong, but he could not do anything to the sacred ones. All sects, submit to me! On this day, after Linlang Wentian returned, he announced to the world that he wanted to rule the remaining half of the godless continent. He looked down on the world with his own strength. Even if the martial pavilion was no longer around, he still wanted to unify the godless continent. We are willing to submit! Submit! On this day, almost all the sects, clans, and forces submitted to Linlang Wentian. This was because in their hearts, Linlang Wentian was the last hope of the godless continent. However, under such circumstances there were still a few sects that were unwilling to submit to Linlang Wentian. Among them were the 9 Cloud sect, the Upper and Lower Qianquan sect, and the Jiang family. The godless continent owes the godless continent a debt of gratitude to the godless continent. I naturally understand that you do not submit, Linlang Wentian said directly. But the Upper and Lower Qianquan sect and the Jiang family, what do you mean by not submitting? Do you want me to personally pay you a visit? Linlang Wentian was very domineering and arrogant. He understood a principle. If he wanted to be external, he had to first ensure internal security. You can't enter the Upper and Lower Qianquan sect's Qianquan formation. The sect master of the Upper and Lower Qianquan sect said directly. We don't want to interfere in anything in the world. You can be the boss of the godless continent, and we can be our own free clouds and wild cranes. In that case, very good, Linlang Wentian said coldly. If you dare to cross the line, don't blame me for being ruthless. In the end, the Upper and Lower Qianquan sect were safe and sound, each in their own sect. However, the most mysterious Jiang family on the godless continent did not speak. With Linlang Wentian's character and temper, he naturally would not let the Jiang family off. On this day, Linlang Wentian came. He stood outside the Jiang family's mountain gate and punched out. It was as if the sun had fallen, shattering the Jiang family's mountain gate. Pavilion Master of the Martial Pavilion, what a powerful aura! The current head of the Jiang family walked out and stared at Linlang Wentian. He said, What? Are you here to destroy my Jiang family today? I don't dare to say that I'm destroying you, but now that I've come out of seclusion, this world should be unified. Linlang Wentian said in a deep voice. As soon as these words were said, the current head of the Jiang family laughed mockingly and said, Unify this world? Then why don't you go and destroy the so-called sacred clan first? You don't have the ability, yet you come to my Jiang family to vent your anger. Are you a true hero or a hypocrite? Or do you think that my Jiang family is afraid of you, Linlang Wentian? Chapter 614. Linlang Wentian was born. He was above a demigod and below a true god. His strength was enough to intimidate everything. However, he was still unable to destroy the sacred clan. Now, the words of the Jiang family's current patriarch had undoubtedly hit the hardest spot for Linlang Wentian. How dare you? What does it have to do with you? Linlang Wentian was furious. She pointed at the Jiang family head and said, Submit or be destroyed. Choose for yourself. The 7th-generation Jiang family head would like to exchange blows with the martial pavilion master today. The 4th-generation Jiang family head also has the same intention. Including me, the 3 patriarchs of the Jiang clan are all here. At this moment, 2 more elders walked out from the Jiang family's mountain gate. The 3 generations of Jiang family heads gathered together. This was the Jiang family's last trump card. However, these 3 people's cultivation was only at the peak of Deva 5th decay. They had yet to step into the demigod realm. I'm not even afraid of the demigods. Not to mention you, Lin Langwetian said contemptuously. Since you insist, then from now on, there will be no Jiang family on the godless continent. The roots of the Jiang family are not here, the current generation Jiang family head said. He looked up at the sky with yearning in his eyes and said, the roots of the Jiang family are there. The Jiang family's inheritance comes from the 9th heaven? Lin Langwetian raised her eyebrows, but the coldness in her eyes was still there. So what if it came from the 9th heaven divine realm? The martial pavilion was still the martial god who came from the 9th heaven divine realm. Now, the martial god of the 9th heaven divine realm could be said to be one of the strongest gods. You're wrong. The 4th generation Jiang family head shook his head and said, the roots of the Jiang family are connected to the heavens. What do you mean? Lin Langwetian frowned. She had a bad feeling. Connected to the heavens, what is that? The 7th generation Jiang family head said mockingly. Heaven and earth, the roots of the Jiang family are on the ground. Speak clearly. The bad feeling in Lin Langwetian's heart grew stronger. The Jiang family was now on the ground, but why did these generations of family heads speak like that? Could it be that the ground they were talking about was not this ground? Was there another meaning? There's no need to say more. If the Jiang clan is destroyed today, not to mention the martial pavilion, even the martial god in the continent of the 9 heavens won't be able to protect you, said the patriarch coldly. Humph. Today, I want to see what other resources your Jiang clan has. Don't think that you can scare me with just a few words, Lin Langwetian shouted. Then, his fist radiance exploded and fell like a shining sun. The 3 generations of Jiang family patriarchs attacked together, but with just one punch, the 3 of them exploded and died in the air. In the face of Lin Langwetian, there was truly no one in this world who could contend against her. Jiang family? Just an ant. Today, I'll turn all of you into dust, Lin Langwetian said softly. She raised her palm, and like a heavenly canopy, it pressed down on the entire Jiang clan. With Lin Langwetian's cultivation, if this palm landed, the entire Jiang family would really be annihilated. At this moment, on a small mountain within the sect, Jiang Yueli's face was covered in tears. She was still young, but she saw the scene of 3 generations of Jiang family patriarchs dying at the same time. Although she was young, she was sensible. She knew that the current Jiang clan was about to be annihilated. Bad guy! Jiang Yueli wiped away her tears and shouted at Lin Langwetian, who was outside the sect, with a slightly childish voice. However, Lin Langwetian did not care about her at all. After all, in his eyes, what was the difference between a little girl with a low cultivation and an ant? Are you courting death? However, before the palm could land, a hurried and angry voice came from the void. Then, a purple mist rose and quickly turned black. It was as if a furnace had appeared out of nowhere and struck Lin Langwetian's palm. Boom! Along with an explosion, Lin Langwetian's palm shattered but reassembled in an instant. At the same time, a young man in a Taoist robe and holding a dark purple gold furnace stood above the Jiang clan's mountain gate. It's you! Little Taoist! Jiang Yueli exclaimed. She looked at the young man in the air and asked, Where's Jiang Chen? Him? He's sleeping. The little Taoist smiled and patted his chest. His back was covered in cold sweat. This little Taoist was Mu De. After he came out of the cave on the 3rd mountain, he sensed that a great battle had broken out in the Jiang clan. At that moment, Mu De panicked. He knew very well how Jiang Chen felt about Jiang Yueli. How could Mu De not guess Jiang Yueli's identity? She was the reincarnation of the moon goddess from the 9th heaven divine realm. If the Jiang clan was annihilated today, Mu De would not interfere at all. However, if Jiang Yueli died as well, Mu De could not sit by and do nothing. He knew better than anyone that if Jiang Yuli died, with Jiang Chen's personality, the whole world would be buried with her. It's you? Impossible! You're already dead. Lin Lang Wentian's expression changed drastically. He stared at Mu Yude as if he had seen a ghost. This reaction made Mu Yude a little confused. What are you talking about? Mu Yude asked. I've seen your portrait in the ancient books. You're already dead. You died 10,000 years ago. Your physical body is suppressed on the first mountain under the netherworld. You can't be alive. Lin Lang Wentian seemed to have suffered a great blow. She roared with all her might and her body kept retreating. Mu Yude's eyes narrowed. How do you know that my physical body is suppressed on the first mountain? It was Taoist Tong Tian who told Mu Yude about this. Other than that, how many people in the world knew about this? No. You're not him. Lin Lang Wentian suddenly reacted. He could see that Mu Yude's situation was different from what was recorded in the ancient books. The person recorded in the ancient books was known as the Lord of the Four Underworlds. The four underworlds were the East, West, South, and North underworlds. The person recorded in the ancient books was the Lord of the Four Underworlds. He was also known as the Lord of the Underworlds and the Lord of the Underworlds. You're just a remnant of his soul. Lin Lang Wentian shouted. Don't try to fool me. When did I say anything? Mu Yude was also stunned by her words. Then, he pointed at his feet and said, Today, I won't say anything else, but you can't destroy the Jiang family. You. Lin Lang Wentian raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, Who do you think you are? Me? Mu Yude said in a low voice. An aura erupted from his body. He had reached the level of a demigod. Moreover, Mu Yude's aura was still rising. It was almost on par with Lin Lang Wentian's strength. Impossible. No one in this world can become a demigod. Lin Lang Wentian exclaimed. Her eyes were filled with shock and surprise. Why is it impossible? You've reached the level of a demigod. Mu Yude pursed his lips. If it weren't for the lack of time, I would have become a demigod long ago. Chapter 615. No one knew better than Mu Yude what was inside the cave on the third mountain. He had obtained a great opportunity inside, and his cultivation level had skyrocketed. However, he could not stay in the cave for too long. There were special laws and orders inside. If he stayed there for too long, he would be in big trouble. That was why Mu Yude had to come out of seclusion. Just as he said, if he was given a little more time to cultivate in the cave for a period of time, he would be able to become a god in the cave. However, Mu Yude came out of seclusion at the right time. I don't want to talk to you. You can be the boss of the godless continent. I just need to protect Jiang Yuli for Jiang Chen, Mu Yude said. If you don't agree, you can try. I, Lin Lang Wentian, am a man of my word. Lin Lang Wentian narrowed his eyes, and the killing intent in his eyes surged. If I say the Jiang family will die today, then it must die. What a joke! I dare you to move! Mu Yude was also furious. I've said so much to you, but you still don't want to leave, right? Fine. Fight. Boom! The next moment, the two of them attacked without saying a word. One of them was like a purple true dragon, flying across the void. When he opened his palm, it was as if the universe was turning upside down. The other person was like a Taotai, swallowing everything around him with his mouth open. Mu Yude's Taoist robe fluttered. The light in his mouth shone brightly, and the entire Jiang family was sucked into his mouth. He was worried that the Jiang family would be implicated in the battle. If you die, no one in the Jiang family will be left alive! Lin Lang Wentian roared. The two of them fought from the real world to the void, and then from the void to the ground. With Lin Lang Wentian's cultivation level, he was not weaker than Mu Yude. If he attacked with his full strength, Mu Yude would have been defeated. However, Lin Lang Wentian was wary of Mu Yude. That was because Mu Yude was too similar to the person recorded in the ancient books. If he was really the person recorded in the ancient books, Lin Lang Wentian would not dare to kill him. Lin Lang Wentian had not used his full strength. He retreated as he fought. The two of them went deep into the ground until they reached an open area. There was a black river there. The river water was calm and had never flowed since ancient times. This river was the so-called Nether River. According to legend, the end of the Nether River was connected to the 9 underworlds, connected to the true Yellow Springs. And inside, the world's #1 mountain was there. If you really are that person, then when you reach the first mountain, there will definitely be changes. Lin Lang Wentian thought as she fought and retreated. The two of them went against the Netherworld River and fought their way up. 3 days later, the two of them arrived at the end of the Nether River. "You purposely lured me here," Mu Yuda whispered. The two of them had been fighting for 3 whole days. How could he not have guessed Lin Lang Wentian's intentions? "So what? If you really are the Lord of the Four Abyss, would you dare to enter?" Lin Lang Wentian said in a deep voice. "If not, then the end of the Nether River will be your burial ground." Mu Yuda's expression became strange when he heard this. So what if he was the Lord of the 4 underworlds? Currently, his memory was incomplete, and his cultivation was weaker than Lin Lang Wentian's. Even if he was the master of the 4 underworlds, wouldn't it be easy for Lin Lang Wentian to kill him? If that was the case, why did Lin Lang Wentian insist on an answer? Could it be that if Mu Yuda was the Lord of the 4 underworlds, it had a lot to do with Lin Lang Wentian? Since ancient times, living people have never entered the 4 underworlds. I'm still alive. How can I enter the underworld? Mu Yuda said angrily. Don't tell me you have a way to enter the underworld? You can enter after I kill you, Lin Lang Wentian said coldly. Wait. Mu Yuda panicked and hurriedly waved his hand. He was puzzled. Lin Lang Wentian had been giving in to him before. Why was Lin Lang Wentian being serious now? Brother, don't you want to know if I'm the Lord of the 4 underworlds? If you kill me now, who's going to tell you the answer? However, Mu Yuda didn't know that the so-called first mountain was actually a small hill at the end of the Nether River. Just like at this moment, the inconspicuous little slope between Lin Lang Wentian and Mu Yuda was the first mountain that everyone in the world knew. They were already at the first mountain, but Mu Yuda didn't react at all. Lin Lang Wentian naturally thought that Mu Yuda wasn't the Lord of the 4 underworlds. Since he wasn't, what was the point of keeping him alive? Just kill him. Boom! Lin Lang Wentian didn't show any mercy at this moment. She pressed her palm down, and the entire void collapsed. Even the water of the Nether River, which hadn't flowed for thousands of years, started flowing slowly under this palm. Mu Yuda's face was pale. He finally understood how powerful Lin Lang Wentian was. Mu Yuda would not be able to defend himself against this palm strike. Wait. Let me know why I'm going to die. Mu Yuda panicked and gave up. He looked at Lin Lang Wentian and asked curiously, You really can't destroy the sacred ones with your strength? Why should I destroy them? Lin Lang Wentian chuckled. Her face was full of mockery as she said, I'll leave behind a strong opponent for myself so that I won't be defeated. Only then will the world respect me and know how strong I am. So, you can destroy the sacred ones, but you didn't? Mu Yuda said in a low voice. You left the sacred ones alive just to show off? But if you destroyed the sacred ones, wouldn't the world know how powerful you are? Lin Lang Wentian chuckled. If the sacred ones were still around, the godless continent would need me. As long as I say the word, who would dare to disobey? If the sacred ones were gone, the godless continent wouldn't need me to protect it. By then, although people would listen to me, it wouldn't be like now, where everyone respects me. You're so selfish, Mu Yuda said in a low voice. Lin Lang Wentian purposely didn't destroy the sacred ones for the sake of that groundless glory, respect. If this matter were to spread, it would chill the hearts of many living beings on the godless continent. Now you know what you need to know. You can die in peace, Lin Lang Wentian said softly. Her palm was already 10 feet above Mu Yuda's head. If I die, Jiangchun won't let you off, Mu Yuda roared angrily. He was afraid of death, so his entire body was trembling. He was afraid of death, so he wanted to use Jiang Chen's name to intimidate Linlang Wentian. However, how could the current Linlang Wentian be afraid of Jiang Chen? I can't accept this. At this moment, Mu Yude roared. I haven't gone to the first mountain yet. My physical body is still there. If my physical body and soul were complete, I wouldn't be afraid of you. The moment he finished speaking, the space around him seemed to freeze. Then, a very gentle voice came from the small slope. You're finally here. Chapter 616. His words caused Linlang Wentian's expression to change drastically. He hurriedly stopped and retreated far away. The divine light on his body burned like flames. It looked like he was going to fight with his life on the line. Mu Yude was dumbfounded because he saw cracks appearing on the small slope in front of him. A black palm covered in obscure patterns was struggling to dig out from the cracks. Who are you? Mu Yude was terrified. Even his voice was trembling. For some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity the moment he saw the palm. However, he also felt an inexplicable sense of fear. In fact, he could even understand the cryptic patterns on the palm with a single glance. Those were the runes of the underworld. It was a kind of brand. In the underworld, such a brand was a supreme honor. You're asking who I am? The unknown living being at the bottom of the small slope seemed to be surprised. After a pause, he said, I am you, and you are me. Then who am I? Mu Yude asked. The Lord of the Four Abyss, the King of the Underworld. The living being at the bottom of the small slope suddenly raised his voice, full of arrogance. At this moment, Linlang Wentian turned around and ran without looking back. He knew that he had caused a lot of trouble. Linlang Wentian even regretted it. If he had killed Mu Yude directly, he would not have caused such a huge problem. However, he also had other thoughts in his mind. Otherwise, Linlang Wentian would not have gone through so much trouble to lure Mu Yude here. You're finally here. I've been waiting for you for countless years. Boom! At this moment, the small slope exploded. A man covered in purple and gold stood there. His arms and palms were black and filled with the brand of the underworld. His appearance was not quite the same as Mu Yude's. However, upon closer inspection, it was clearly the older Mu Yude. I am the Lord of the Four Abyss, Mu Yude said softly as images flashed past his eyes. The memories of his previous life were completely awakened the moment he saw this living being. He saw his past, and knew why his physical body was here. At this moment, Mu Yude's expression changed drastically. He stared at the living being and said, You shouldn't have come into being. But you're here. The living being said softly. Since you're here, you must want me to come into being. No! I was the one who sealed you back then. You devil fetus! Mu Yude roared with a ferocious expression. Go back! However, the creature chuckled softly. He pointed at Mu Yude and said, Do you still have the strength to seal me now? At this point, the living being laughed wildly. There was arrogance in his laughter, but there was also a trace of sadness. Perhaps no one would have thought that it was Mu Yude who had sealed his own body. Instead of being the lord of the underworld, why did you have to go to the mortal realm? Look at how miserable you are now. The creature sighed. Why is it like this? Could it be that the creatures of the underworld are really so dark and filthy? You've killed too many people, Mu Yude said grimly. However, Mu Yude fell silent the moment he finished speaking. This creature was the body that Mu Yude had shed in his previous life. He had placed all the stains on this fleshly body. After that, Mu Yude reincarnated and became what he was today. However, at the end of the day, Mu Yude was the one who had caused all the bloodshed in the past. Both of them knew that Mu Yude was only deceiving himself when he sealed his body. You and I both know what happened, the creature said softly. The creature said softly, I've shouldered all the infamy and sins for you, but in the end, you've sealed me away. Are you worthy of me? Mu Yude was speechless. He could not refute the creature's words. After regaining his memories, Muyuda realized how ruthless he had been back then. In fact, Muyuda had contributed to the chaos in the most chaotic eras in the world. I didn't want to continue, so I sealed you. I've repented, Muyuda said. Why can you repent but I can't? The creature's eyes narrowed. Don't leave me behind. Take me with you. Why wouldn't I agree to it? Moreover, I'm your body. I'll do whatever you want. When have I ever disobeyed you? What do you take me for? The words made Muyuda's thoughts more and more complicated. He did not dare to look into the creature's eyes. He felt ashamed and guilty. You're a soul, and I'm a body. We should be together, the creature said. After the fusion, you'll still be you. This body will still be under your control. And I'll still be the Lord of the Four Abysses in the eyes of the world. As for what you'll do in the future, I have no right to interfere. Just like I said, I'm just your body. All the actions of this body will be controlled by you, the soul. From now on, whether it's good or bad, whether it's evil or good, it'll still be up to you. Buzz! Just as he finished speaking, the living being suddenly exploded into a rain of light that filled the sky and rained down on Muyuda's body. This was the ritual of fusion. It could not be reversed. After all, the two of them were originally one. Muyuda stood where he was. He did not resist. He knew that resistance was useless. However, he sighed inwardly. How did things come to this? If your heart is good, darkness can also be light. All of a sudden, Taoist Heaven Span appeared. He looked at Muyuda and said, Can you tell the difference between good and evil? Muyuda opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. Could one really tell the difference between good and evil? What was good? What was evil? There was no right or wrong in this world. It seems you haven't thought things through, Taoist Heaven Span said softly. Then, he performed a hand seal and branded a seal on Muyuda's soul. When you've thought things through, the seal will be undone, Taoist Heaven Span said. With that, he turned to leave. At this moment, Muyud hurriedly stopped Taoist Heaven Span and asked, What about you? You're the lord of a realm. Have you ever thought things through? Me? What else can I think about? I don't even have a home anymore. I'm just an old man who's been stranded outside. Taoist Heaven Span laughed. However, this smile was filled with sorrow and a wisp of indescribable anger. The 6 paths of reincarnation, the 6 worlds, and now. Muyuda sighed and did not finish his sentence. He had regained his memories, and knew what had happened. It was a tragedy for the entire world. Let's wait for him to come back. If he does, we might be able to take everything back, Taoist Heaven Span said. I'll take back my underworld sooner or later, Muyuda said in a low voice. Chapter 617. Very few people knew what had happened back then. There were only a few records in the ancient books. One of them was about the 6 Tao and the 6 realms. Taoist Heaven Span did not say anything else. He stepped into the void and left the place. Half a day later, Muyuda merged with his body. His cultivation had reached the level of a demigod and below a true god. Old man, you're still so careful. You sealed so much of my cultivation. Muyuda smiled bitterly. However, although Muyuda was smiling, he gave off a very sinister feeling. Muyuda had fused with his physical body, and his soul had become one with his body. Logically speaking, he should have recovered to his peak state. However, Taoist Heaven Span was afraid of Muyuda. Because Muyuda was one of the instigators of the Dark Rebellion. Taoist Heaven Span was worried that Muyuda would start another Dark Rebellion, so he sealed most of his cultivation. However, both of them knew that the seal was nothing more than a decoration to Muyuda after he returned. As long as Muyuda wanted to, he could break the seal at any time. Yeah, I still can't tell the difference between good and evil. Muyuda let out a long sigh. He patted his chest and said, Old friend, I won't abandon you in this life. Even if it's good, I'll respect it with you. Even if it's evil, I'll bear it with you. Muyuda said. With that, Muyuda formed a seal with his hands, and many seals fell on his body. He was worried that he would not be able to break Taoist Heavenspan's seal, so he added a few more seals on himself. Moreover, they were inner demon seals. If I can't tell the difference between good and evil, this seal will stay with me for the rest of my life. Even if I die, I won't be able to break it, Muyuda said. With that, Muyuda stood up and looked at the door at the end of the underworld river. A trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. That used to be his home. It used to be a world. It used to be the most important place on the reincarnation road. But now, it no longer belonged to him. During the earliest chaos, the underworld was conquered. In order to prevent the living beings in the underworld from coming out, the paragons worked together to seal the underworld. Right now, Muyuda was standing at the entrance of his hometown, but he didn't dare to enter. He couldn't enter. One day, the 6 paths will return, and the 6 realms will appear together. The world will become even more beautiful, Muyuda said. In the end, Muyuda left and stepped into the void, arriving at the barren state. He spat out the Jiang family's mountain gate in his body, landing on the mountain gate that used to belong to the Qianzuan sect. At the same time, he spread his divine sense across the land and found the people of the Qianzuan sect in a small world. He brought the Quanzun sect back and settled them in the center of the barren state with the Jiang family. On this day, a powerhouse from the saint race arrived. But after looking from afar, he hurriedly fled. Oh no! Another demigod monster has appeared. What? What kind of world is this? How could there be such a creature? The entire saint race was shaken. There were even people who sighed in grief. He originally thought that the sacred race would be able to unify the godless continent, but who would have thought that Lin Lang Wentian would appear first, and now Mu Yud? 2 demigod existences were enough to exterminate the saints. No! We have to make a choice. Sacrifice. Our saint race has done so much. We cannot fail at the final moment. Sacrifice. Begin the sacrifice. For darkness and dawn. On this day, all 18 saint race families were summoned back. Among them were those who had defected to the saint race. It was also on this day that the entire underworld state was filled with blood-curdling screams. The smell of blood howled like a gale. The entire sky above the underworld state was shrouded in a layer of blood mist. Blood sacrifice. The saint race is really sparing no expense. Lin Lang Wentian stood at the former location of the martial pavilion and looked up at the underworld state. A solemn look flashed across her eyes. Blood sacrifice, as its name implied, was a blood sacrifice to the great Tao. Perhaps it was a terrifying power. Now, looking at the sky of the underworld state, Lin Lang Wentian knew that there were probably not many living beings left in the underworld state. 80 to 90% of the creatures had been killed, used as a blood sacrifice. Lin Lang Wentian! Today is the final battle. All of you must die. No one can stop our saint race. 3 days later, the sky of the underworld state was clear again. However, there were 3 people standing there, challenging Lin Lang Wentian from tens of thousands of miles away. 3 demigods. Lin Lang Wentian muttered softly, but the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She said mockingly, "So what if you became a demigod through blood sacrifice? It's not your own power, so it's inherently flawed. No matter how many of you have, I, Lin Lang Wentian, am still not afraid. Old man, do you think I should make a move?" At this moment, Mu Yud stared at the underworld state and said softly. He knew that Taoist Heaven Span was watching him at all times. Taoist Heaven Span could hear his whisper. If you want to protect something, then protect it. In terms of good and evil, you don't understand at all in your current situation. Taoist Heaven Span's voice rang in Mu Yud's ears. I'll help protect that person's foundation. I'll take it as I owe him, Mu Yud said softly. With that, Mu Yud soared into the sky and stood at the top of the barren state. He stared at the 3 demigods of the saint race and said, I'll fight this battle. Attack together. We're all above demigods. How can we lose to you when it's 3 against 2? After today, the godless continent will have a new master. In the next moment, 2 of them charged at Lin Lang Wentian, while the other charged at Mu Yud. Mu Yud was stunned for a moment. He muttered, "How much are they looking down on me? 2 against Lin Lang Wentian, but only 1 against me?" Boom! Boom! On this day, the battle between the 5 demigods began. No one could see the situation clearly. They had all entered the void and were fighting fiercely at the edge of the chaos. The fluctuations of the battle were like thunder, reverberating throughout the entire godless continent. Everyone's hearts were in their throats because this battle concerned the life and death of the godless continent. We've lost. Yeah, we've lost. 10 days later, Taoist Heaven Span and the beings of the third mountain spoke at almost the same time. They could see the situation of the battle and also saw that Lin Lang Wentian and Mu Yud were being suppressed. Fortunately, the 3 demigods of the saint race were also severely injured. However, what surprised everyone was that at the last moment, 2 of the 3 demigods actually self-destructed. They poured their cultivation, essence, spirit, and even soul energy into the other person's body. A god of the land. After so many years, a god of the land has appeared again. Taoist Heaven Span and the beings of the third mountain sighed. In front of a god of the land, demigods were nothing. At this moment, Lin Lang Wentian was the first to retreat. He charged directly into the chaos, knowing that only in the chaos would he have a chance of survival. Chapter 618. Even a deity would not dare to enter the boundless chaos. Now, Lin Lang Wentian could only hide in it to save his life. At this moment, he was filled with regret. If he had destroyed the divine tribe and foregone the so-called glory, he would not have to face such trouble now. Although I have not recovered to my peak, I am invincible in the godless continent. At this moment, the deity of the divine tribe laughed wildly. He stared at Mu Yud, who had not left, and said mockingly, "What? You still want to stop me? I can't." Mu Yud shook his head helplessly. There was a seal in his body. If the seal could be broken, a mere deity of the land would be nothing. But now, Mu Yud could not break the seal at all. "The godless continent is going to be destroyed in the end," the deity said softly. He slowly reached out his hand and pressed down on Mu Yud. "If the godless continent is destroyed, so be it. It is just a springboard," Mu Yud said softly. "Right now, I only want to protect some things." After saying that, Mu Yud looked at the deity mockingly and asked, "Do you really think you can kill me?" "Humph, you are already a dead man," the deity sneered. In his eyes, even if Mu Yud's cultivation was above the demigod level, he could not compete with him. "I can't compete with you, but if I want to leave, you can't stop me," Mu Yud said softly. Buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, light danced around Mu Yud, and a space-time passage seemed to appear. He stepped into it, and used a great technique to take away the Jiang family and the Qianzuan sect. So be it. The deity did not care. In his eyes, he was invincible. Now, it was time to do the most important thing. The door of darkness. It will be opened today, the deity shouted with a smile and excitement on his face. He returned to the nether continent, and arrived in front of an abyss. This abyss was very famous in the nether continent. It was called Heaven's Abyss, and it was said to be connected to the heavens. However, no one knew that this so-called Heaven's Abyss was actually a sealed place. At the bottom of the abyss, there was a door. That door was the door of darkness. The gate of darkness was connected to another world, precisely the other side. At this moment, this deity was standing in front of Heaven Abyss. He frowned and said softly, "This seal is a bit tricky. It will take some time." After saying that, he began to form hand seals with both hands and began to break the seal. As long as the seal was broken, he would be able to smoothly enter Heaven Abyss and open the door of darkness. At that time, the world would usher in the darkest era. "Old thing, are you really not going to make a move?" At this moment, Mu Yudo was standing at the peak of a small world. How do I do it? Taoist Heavenspan said helplessly. It's not like you don't know the situation I'm in. If I attack, everything will be gone. AI. Muyud let out a long sigh. He knew exactly how strong Taoist Heavenspan was, and also knew that there was nothing he could do about it. If Taoist Heavenspan could attack, he would have done so long ago. Is there no hope for this world? Muyud asked. He thought of the underworld. Back then, the underworld had been conquered in the same way. However, compared to the godless continent, the underworld was bigger and had a higher level. It was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the 9 firmaments. Perhaps there's still hope. Taoist Heavenspan's voice was strange as he looked at the 3rd mountain. At the same time, the living being on the 3rd mountain was staring at Jiangchen, his eyes filled with shock. That was because Jiangchen's body was rippling. That was a sign that he was about to awaken. Furthermore, Jiangchen's aura was rising, and mysterious runes were flashing around him. There was also the image of a halberd floating above Jiangchen's head. That was Jiangchen's weapon when he was Celestial King Tianyuan. The weapon spirit has returned, the living being on the 3rd mountain exclaimed. The weapon spirit was the soul of a weapon. For example, a sword had a sword spirit, and a saber had a saber spirit. Previously, Jiangchen had obtained the weapon he used when he was Celestial King Tianyuan, the halberd. But at that time, the weapon spirit had long since disappeared. But now, with Jiangchen's Great Dream 3000, the weapon spirit had returned. This was the weapon Jiangchen used when he was Celestial King Tianyuan, and it contained a trace of the power of the Tao. What kind of dream did this kid have? What did he experience in his dream? The living being on the 3rd mountain exclaimed. He suspected that Jiangchen might have returned to the past and dreamed of being Celestial King Tianyuan. To find the past in a dream was something that had never happened before. Could something have happened? The living being on the 3rd mountain frowned. Something like this had never happened before. Even he did not know if Jiangchen would still be the same person after waking up. Great Dream 3000, what did you dream of? The living being sighed, unsure of what to do. 1. At that moment, a vibration came from Jiangchen's body. Then, the weapon spirit solidified, and the halberd appeared automatically from Jiangchen's body. Then, the weapon spirit merged with the halberd, and a trace of the power of the Tao entered Jiangchen's body. At the same time, ancient scriptures appeared. Upon closer inspection, it looked more like a Tao skill. 6 calamities! The creature cried out in surprise. He recognized these scriptures, and with a single glance, he could tell what was recorded in these scriptures. This was a Tao skill. This was the famous Tao skill Jiangchen used when he was Celestial King Tianyuan, the 6 calamities. The 6 calamities and heavenly calamities were very famous even when Jiangchen was Divine King Tianyuan. However, in this world, only Jiangchen could use it. That was because this Tao skill could only be used with the heavenly halberd. In the past, during the final battle, Jiangchen used the 6 calamities to delay until the end, waiting for the gods to descend. This living being had seen Jiangchen use the 6 calamities before. Its power was just like the name of the Tao skill. 6 calamities appeared together, enough to destroy the heavens. I didn't expect that I would be so strong in that life. Suddenly, Jiangchen whispered. His eyes slowly opened, but his brows were slightly furrowed. That was because in his dream, he dreamed of his experience as Celestial King Tianyuan. However, he couldn't remember who he was. Especially because he couldn't remember who he was in his first life. More importantly, he didn't know why he had to reincarnate. He only found the Tao skill and weapon spirit of Celestial King Tianyuan in his dream. Of course, in that dream, Jiangchen was also cultivating. Now that he had awakened, the cultivation he cultivated in the dream merged with his body, causing his cultivation to skyrocket. At this moment, he had reached the Celestial Decay Stage 5. Only the Celestial Decay Stage 5? Although it's much higher than I expected, it's still powerless to change anything. The living being sighed. The celestial decay stage 5 was usually the strongest existence on the godless continent. But now, a land god had appeared among the sacred clan. Chapter 619. Even a demigod was no match for a land god. Jiangqin, a mere heaven's decay stage 5, was nothing to him. He probably wouldn't even be able to withstand a single finger from the sacred clan's god. "By the way, how do you feel now?" the creature asked. He was very curious as to why the great dream of 3000 would dream of his past life. Logically speaking, the great dream of 3000 was a secret technique that would only allow one to dream of a non-existent life. One would cultivate in that new life until they woke up and merged with their own cultivation. Since ancient times, there had been people who had used and tried the great dream of 3000, but no one had ever dreamt of their past life. "I don't know," Jiangqin said straightforwardly. "After I entered, I dreamt of Heaven Origin Divine King's life." As Jiangqin spoke, he frowned slightly and asked, "Is there any problem with my soul?" "Oh? Where did that come from?" The creature seemed surprised, as if he didn't understand what Jiangqin meant. "Don't pretend. With your status, how can you not know about me?" Jiangqin smiled bitterly. "In this world, I'm probably the one who is kept in the dark the most. Clearly, all the karma came from me. But now, the one who doesn't know the truth is me," Jiangqin said softly. "I have a feeling that there's something wrong with my soul. It's like some kind of seal has been added to it. Some kind of memory seal." "Nonsense," the creature said. "There's no such Tao technique in this world, no such restriction, and no such seal." "Then, what if there is?" Jiangqin asked. "What happened in the past? Why did I dream of Heaven Origin Divine King's life, but not the most important part?" "How would I know?" the creature said snappily. "That's your own business. What does it have to do with me?" "It really has nothing to do with me?" "You really don't know?" Jiangqin asked. "Even if I know, it has nothing to do with you." The creature's voice suddenly became cold. "Since you've woken up, you can leave now. The third mountain does not welcome outsiders. Wait a little longer. Let me rest here for a few days," Jiangqin said. The creature didn't say much. It even told Jiangqin about the current situation of the godless continent. When Jiangqin learned that the saints had carried out a blood sacrifice to become a god of the land, a faint smile appeared on his face. "A land god? Heh. Interesting," Jiangqin whispered. Then, he closed his eyes. The moment he closed his eyes, the halberd beside him entered his body. At the same time, the scripture rushed into his mind. He was revisiting the Tao techniques that he had once mastered. 6 calamities. I really don't know if it's a good or bad thing for such a brutal and disastrous Tao skill to appear again. The living being sighed. However, for this creature, it didn't matter whether Jiangqin was dead or alive, or whether he had become the strongest man in the world. It didn't matter to him at all. He had been cultivating in the third mountain all this time, cultivating a certain cultivation technique. Once this cultivation technique was completed and he was born, the world would be at peace. The source of all the chaos and chaos in the past would be reduced to ashes. A prosperous era turned into a chaotic era because of the saints. The older generation either doesn't dare to fight, defected, or died. It's time for us, the younger generation, to take control of this golden age. Ha ha ha, to die. That's fine too. A person should do something in life. Even if the world calls them demons, I'll accept it. On this day, in a corner of the godless continent, 3 youths stood up. They had just finished their heavenly tribulations and their cultivation had reached the 5th decay of the heavens. The 3 of them looked young, but each of them exuded a monstrous demonic aura. Ghostly shadows floated around them. Beneath their feet, hundreds of ghosts howled. Above their heads, several black lotuses swayed. It was like the most demonic light in the darkest time and space. It was so dark that it made people tremble, but it was also dark and dazzling. On this day, the 3 of them tore through the void and walked around the godless continent. The demonic aura on their bodies shocked all living beings. These three are so young. Which sect are they from? Are they demons? I know them. They are 3 demons who have fallen into the demonic path. Many people cried out in surprise as they raised their heads to look at the 3 figures. Their eyes flickered with shock. Half a day later, the 3 of them arrived near the Nether State's heavenly abyss. Jiang Haoren, Qin Daoming, Lu Songang. At this moment, the 3 of them landed here. The demonic aura on their bodies surged as they stared at the god who was breaking the seal of heavenly abyss. You 3 brats, what are you doing here? Do you want to die? The god raised his eyebrows and scolded angrily. Get lost! I don't want to fight now. You don't want to fight, or you can't fight? Lu Songyang said mockingly. You used all your cultivation to break the seal. Now you can only fight with 20% or 30% of your strength. If the 3 of us join forces, we can fight with you. Ha ha ha, you're just a traitor. That's much worse than us demons, Qin Daoming said with a smile. He looked at Jiang Haoren and asked, What do you mean? The righteous Jiang Haoren? Just kill them, Jiang Haoren said softly. He used to be righteous, but now he was demonic. Guys, our boss is no longer here. You don't have the right to interfere in this world, right? Do you want to steal our boss's limelight or our limelight? Suddenly, a few figures flew over from afar. Taking a closer look, the person in the lead was a little fatty. He looked very honest, but his cultivation had reached the peak of celestial decay 5. On both sides of him, there was an elegant young master with a long whistle in his hand. However, there were corpses and bones under his feet. On the other side, there was a young man with purple light all over his body. He was domineering, and when he opened and closed his eyes, there seemed to be purple stars floating in his eyes. These 3 people were Jiang Lu, Xiao Qingyi, and Wakako. Oh, you're all here? I'm lucky to have made it in time. In the north, a woman's tone was slightly arrogant. Behind her, a door floated up and down as if a creature was about to walk out. This person was Hua Lianyi. Immediately after, many people came from all directions. Most of them were a group of young men led by Jiang Chen. Even Hua Lianyi and Bai Fengyu came. In the end, there were more than a dozen young men and women at Heavenly Decay Stage 5. They were more or less related to Jiang Chen. The era of the older generation is over. In this era, if we don't die, it'll be our world. Young and impetuous? No, this was the situation forcing them. Was the situation forcing them? No, this was for righteousness. Chapter 620. What was righteousness? Brotherhood can be righteous, family can also be righteous, and so can the affairs of the world. However, at the end of the day, this group of people did not gather for the sake of the world. They did not say it out loud, but they all knew it. They had a leader named Jiang Chen. That person used to be the guardian of the godless continent. Now that he was no longer around, the godless continent would be guarded by this group of underlings. That was the righteousness in their hearts. Where's the damn Taoist? At this moment, Nian Chang'e also came. He looked terrible as he stared at Hua Lianyi and the others. He knew Mu Yerd was in the Qianzuan sect. He's not dead, but he's almost dead, Hua Lianyi said. Well, he was injured by him. After that, he used a forbidden technique to escape. He suffered too much damage and is half dead now. Damn Taoist! If you die, where am I going to find my body? Nian Chang'e's face was even more terrible, and his eyes were about to spit fire. A bunch of kids want to stop my great cause? At this moment, the deity of the sacred clan was full of contempt. Although he could not use his full strength, this group of heavenly human cultivators was really not a match for him. Why don't you give it a try? You've lost to me before. Nian Chang'e raised his eyebrows. If he had not been careless and fallen into the trap, the sacred clan would have had a bright future. Now, it was too late to regret. He could only solve this matter with his own hands. Hey, you can go in peace, the deity said softly. His main body didn't move at all, but he split into more than a dozen doppelgangers and charged toward Nian Chunga and the others. Even if he could only use 20% or 30% of his strength, it was enough to kill a heavenly human cultivator. Kill! After becoming a demon, it's time for a big battle. Ha ha ha, if I don't die, I'll establish the top demon cultivation sect on the godless continent. If I don't die, I'll give birth to a child for that irresponsible man. At this moment, all kinds of roars were heard. Everyone rushed out and started a fierce battle with the deity near the heavenly abyss. It's good to be young. You're not afraid of death, Taoist Tongtian said with a smile as he watched the battle from afar. The creature from the third mountain was also beside him. That's right. When we were young, when were we ever afraid of death? The living being said softly. But now, if you and I move, even if we don't die, we will implicate many others. Taoist Heavenspan sighed. You're not afraid of death, but you're afraid of the death of others. Perhaps that's the reason why you and I are helpless. Then, the two of them quietly watched the battle in the distance. Even when they saw people die, they didn't frown. They had already become indifferent to life and death. They had witnessed the glory of an era, the destruction of a world, the change of a dynasty, and the fall of an overlord. Everything had passed through the passage of time, and they had all witnessed it. Until now, perhaps there was nothing that could cause waves in their hearts. Speaking of which, if your disciple dies, would you be sad? The creature from the third mountain asked, his eyes landing on Nian Chunga's body. Him? Taoist Heavenspan paused for a moment, as if he were thinking about whether or not he would be sad if Nian Chunga died. In the end, he came to a conclusion. Shaking his head, he said, I gave him the surname Chang'an, and the name Chang'e. I want him to live in peace for the rest of his life, singing songs of peace. Oh. In that case, he'd better not die, the creature muttered. If he dies, you're going to explode. There's no need for me to explode, Taoist Heavenspan said. There are plenty of people who will avenge him. Rumble. Rumble. The battle was getting more and more intense, and neither side was able to help the other. After all, the god's clone was simply too strong. In fact, some people were already dead, and others were seriously injured. For example, Wakako, despite having the hegemonic body of the azure heavens, was being torn to shreds by the god's clone, and had to reforge his fleshly body multiple times. Nayland Mayer was off to the side, performing a war dance. Unfortunately, the difference in strength between the two sides was simply too great. Even with the blessing of her war dance, it was difficult to fight back against the god's clone. Hualien even burned her blood essence and opened the door behind her, summoning a total of 18 battle spirits. However, at this point, only 6 of the 18 battle spirits were left. I say, if they're all dead, one of them will definitely come out from the third mountain, step through the void, and destroy you with a single punch. At this moment, Mu Yu dragged his injured body and stood in the distance. He looked at the god who was undoing the seal and said, Your death date is not far away. What a joke! Who on this godless continent can stop me? Taoist Heavenspan? Or the owner of the third mountain? They can't make a move. That's why I'm invincible here. The god was well aware of the strength of Taoist Heavenspan and the owner of the third mountain. However, he also knew that the two of them could not make a move. There are plenty of people who can deal with you, Muyuda said. Bastard! Where's my fleshly body? Nian Changa was furious. He was almost deformed from the god's clone's attacks. His face was distorted, his ribs were broken, and his legs were chopped off. Just how miserable was this? Even if I give you my fleshly body now, you won't have time to fuse with it. Muyuda pursed his lips. Why don't you wait a little longer? If you survive, I'll give you your fleshly body. If you die, I'll gladly accept it. Pfft. Nian Changa was furious. He was already seriously injured, and at this moment he was so angry that he spat out blood. He burned his essence and blood to rebuild his fleshly body. Then, a beam of light shot up into the sky from his soul. Huh! At this moment, Nyen Changa was dumbfounded. That was the light of his Tao soul. However, his doctrine soul's 36 lotuses had been destroyed because of Jiangchen. What was going on with the light of his Tao soul now? The roots of the withered grass are still there, and the rain is still there. Taoist Heavenspan said softly. The new grass will definitely be stronger than the old one. That's the 72 lotuses? Taoist Heavenspan gave them to you? The god exclaimed because he saw a holy lotus appear in the light of Nyen Changa's Tao soul. There were 72 lotus petals, and they could change heaven and earth. When the 36 lotuses appeared, they would be even stronger. I'll kill you first, the god said in a deep voice. His body trembled, and a drop of essence blood appeared. It turned into a clone that emitted a terrifying aura and charged toward Nyen Changa. Because, among these people, Nyen Changa seemed to be the last threat to him. Everyone, I'll take my leave first, okay? Nyen Changa's face darkened. At this time, his Tao soul had returned and he had advanced. But what was the point of that? He was seriously injured. How could he use the 72 lotuses' divine ability? Of course, he was only joking when he said that he wanted to leave. Since he was here today, he would not leave. Chapter 621. Most importantly, Nyen Changa couldn't leave even if he wanted to. The avatar of the god had already arrived in front of him. The power contained in this avatar was far stronger than the other avatars. Nyen Changa was seriously injured. Although he had formed the 72 lotuses, he was unable to use them. Nyen Changa kept retreating to avoid the clone's attack, but his heart sank. He wouldn't retreat, nor could he retreat. If he kept dodging, he wouldn't be able to escape death in the end. He looked around and saw that Jiang Haoren, Lu Songang, and Chen Lu Dao were all seriously injured. The three of them huddled together and were in a precarious situation. In the distance, Bai Fengyu and the other two were also seriously injured. They were suppressed and couldn't get away at all. Only Wakako and Jianglu were still holding on with the power of their sacred bodies. Shao Qingyi used the corpses to form a cage and trapped himself inside. Although he wasn't in danger for the time being, he couldn't hurt the god's clone either. Of course, the Saint of the Highest Heavens and the Saint of the Heaven and Earth sect had also come for this battle. However, the two of them weren't in good condition either. They were both seriously injured and on the verge of death. If you dare to kill me, he won't let you go. If we die today, just like what that bastard Taoist said, someone will come from the third mountain, step through the void, and destroy you, God. Everyone roared angrily, but they were already powerless. They knew they were no match for the god, but they still came. They knew they were here to die, but they didn't retreat. That was because that was righteousness. Did you hear that? They're right. If they die, someone will come from the third mountain. Suddenly, a light voice came from afar. Following this, a young man with a halberd in his hand stepped through the air like a god of war descending upon the place. At that moment, everyone's eyes narrowed. They were extremely moved. Even the god's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect him to really come. Jiangchen! Boss? Master! After a few breaths of time, numerous exclaims of surprise resounded, and they carried surprise, excitement, and various other emotions. Jiangchen smiled at the crowd. With a jerk of his body, he activated his external incarnation. In the blink of an eye, over 100 clones appeared. Each one of them was like a pack of tigers and wolves as they charged forward. Everywhere it passed, saber lights and shadows would rise and fall, and it was like a raging wolf sweeping through. Those clones of the gods were like paper, and all of them were shattered. So strong! As expected of boss. Master is the best! Everyone exclaimed in surprise. They were both Deva 5th decay, but the difference was not just a little bit. All of them joined forces, but they were no match for these clones. And the moment Jiangchen made a move, with the strength of one person, he destroyed all of the clones. All of you, back off. Leave this person to me, Jiangchen said softly. He looked at the sky and sighed. In my previous life, I had the final say in the godless continent. In this life, I still have the final say in the godless continent. You are just a mere Deva fifth decay. Whatever you say or do, you are nothing in my eyes. The god sneered. Do you know that in my eyes, from the beginning until now, you are just an ant? Ant? Then I, this ant, will teach you how to be a human today, Jiangchen said mockingly. Yes, you have become a god of the land. I am powerless to kill you now, but you want to break the seal here? I can't agree. You think you can stop me? The god said contemptuously. I will just stand here and let your attacks fall from the sky. I will not be hurt at all. I can ignore you and just break the seal with peace of mind. Oh? Jiangchen was struck dumb. He pretended to be surprised and asked, Do you know what my profession is? What do you mean? The god was puzzled. He did not understand why Jiangchen suddenly asked this question. Jiangchen suddenly narrowed his eyes and stabbed the sky halberd into the void. Then, he started to form seals with both hands. I am a god of all professions. All professions must respect me. As the seals were formed, runes surrounded Jiangchen. Array runes, restriction runes, and boundary runes rose one after another. Then, many runes fell like stars and rushed into the seal of heaven abyss. You can break it slowly and I will add more. Let's see if you can break it faster or if I can add more, Jiangchen said mockingly. At this moment, the god's face was as black as ink. His chest was heaving up and down. He was simply about to explode in anger. He had spent a few days to break part of the seal. However, in such a short time, Jiangchen had strengthened the seal again. Moreover, the seal here was even stronger than before. I will kill you first and break the seal. The god flew into a rage. His power came back to him. He moved his main body and showed up in front of Jiangchen right away. Buzz! However, before the god could attack, Jiangchen's figure disappeared. Only an ethereal voice could be heard. Do you know what it means to be a god of all professions? I also know the art of concealment. In front of a god, everything is fake, the god shouted. His eyes flashed as if he had opened the heavenly eye. He was looking for Jiangchen. As a deity, everything in the world would turn into nothingness wherever his eyes passed by. All falsehoods would crumble. He found Jiangchen immediately. However, he also saw that Mu Yude had used the forbidden art and disappeared with a group of people. He wanted to chase after them. However, Mu Yude's forbidden art was extraordinary. Not only did he disappear without a trace, but he also erased all traces of him. Half a day later, in a small world, Jiangchen stared at Mu Yude with a faint smile. Mu Yude felt numb all over. He braced himself and asked, What's wrong? Nothing. I just want to ask you about the immortal king's body, Jiangchen said. Then, he pointed at Nianchanga and said, I think he wants to ask the same question. They are still in the cave of the third mountain. Mu Yude's face fell. I can't move them. You can't move them? Then how did you steal our bodies? Nianchanga widened his eyes. He didn't believe Mu Yude's words at all. Even Jiangchen's face darkened. He said seriously, Is it because you can't move them, or is there something wrong with your body? Everything in the world has a spirit. Mu Yude sighed. Take that ordinary stone for example. If it is nourished by the spiritual chi of heaven and earth for a long time, it can give birth to a spiritual stone and turn into a stone spirit. Take that grass for example. It looks ordinary, but there have been cases of grass and trees turning into spirits since ancient times. Mu Yude said. You've said so much. What on earth do you mean? Jiangchen suddenly had a bad feeling. I've said so much just to tell you that your flesh has gained sentience. Mu Yude said with a wry smile. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the third mountain is extremely dense. Your bodies have gained sentience under the nourishment of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Now, your bodies have gained sentience. Chapter 622. Jiangchun and Yanchang's bodies used to be corpses. However, both of them were extremely powerful and their bodies did not decay. Now, after years of nourishment in the third mountain, their bodies had gained sentience. This was their bodies gaining sentience. This also meant that the two bodies could no longer be called corpses, but a different kind of living being. They had the bodies of the mysterious Sky Supreme Being and Yanchanga, but they had their own consciousness and opinions. Mu Yude also had a headache. He did not expect the two corpses to gain sentience so quickly. Previously, Mu Yude had wanted to bring the two bodies out when he was cultivating in the cave. However, the two bodies seemed to have taken root in the third mountain, and could not be brought out at all. Moreover, the two bodies exuded extremely powerful auras. Their cultivations were probably above that of a demigod. If that was the case, how was Mu Yude going to bring the two bodies out? If that happened, it would be good enough for him to be able to cultivate safely in the cave. What are you going to do about this? Yanchanga was furious. That was his body. If the body did not fuse with him, Yanchanga would not be able to return to her peak state. Even if she cultivated again, there would be flaws in her body. I can only erase the sentience in the two bodies. Otherwise, you can forget about getting your bodies back, Mu Yude said weakly. Mu Yude said weakly. You can't blame me. Who knew that your physical bodies could communicate with spirits? You can't blame yourself? Yanchanga glared at him. I hid my body well. Who told you to bring it to the third mountain? Don't you know what the third mountain is? I didn't know that body was yours back then, Mu Yude quibbled. In fact, Mu Yude already knew the identity of Yanchang's body when he found it. Otherwise, would Mu Yude be interested in an ordinary plaything? Let's not talk about the body first, Jiangchun said in a low voice. The godless continent will not be at peace as long as that land god of the sacred clan is not eliminated. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. They all knew this, but who could compete with the land god? Right now, Mu Yude was the strongest. He was a demigod. However, he had been seriously injured previously, and could be considered a half-dead person now. How could he have the strength to fight a land god? As for the others, they were all at the celestial realm. And Jiangchun had also just broken through to Deva fifth blight, and was not even a half-deity. As for the distance between a demigod and a land god, there was still a realm above demigods. That sacred race guy is here to open the door of darkness, Mu Yude said. He won't pay attention to us. But if the door of darkness is really opened, the godless continent will fall directly, Yanchanga said in a deep voice. What I mean is, we can't kill him, but he can forget about opening the door of darkness, Mu Yude said mockingly. His main body won't be able to move while he's undoing the seal. We'll disturb him every time he's undoing the seal, and then we'll ask Jiangchun to strengthen the seal. Let's see how long it'll take for him to unseal Heaven Abyss. That makes sense. If that's the case, we'll have time to cultivate. Maybe we can really deal with that land god. Everyone suddenly realized that Mu Yude could be very reliable sometimes. However, what Mu Yude said was right. After all, it was too dangerous to fight against a land god. One had to know that the clone of a land god was not something that ordinary people could fight against. Just like before, if Jiangchun hadn't arrived in time, Yanchanga and the others would have died there. They would have been killed by the clone of the land god. Now we can only do as Mu Yude said. Jiangchun thought for a moment, and finally sighed helplessly. Then, Jiangchun asked about the current situation of the godless continent. After half an hour, Jiangchun's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. He stared at Mu Yude and said in a deep voice, Did Lin Lang Wentian deliberately not destroy the sacred race? So that he could prove himself? Yes. Mu Yude's face darkened. Back then, he was a demigod and could destroy the sacred race. But he didn't do that. Now, the blood of the sacred race has stained the heavens and created a land god. Back then, if we had destroyed the sacred race earlier, things wouldn't have developed to this extent. That guy is sneaky. When he saw that the situation was not good, he directly hid in the chaos. Mu Yude said in a deep voice. Go find him, Jiangchen said coldly. I will settle the score with him sooner or later. Now that I have come out, it's time to settle the score. However, before Jiangchen could do anything, Mu Yude and Nian Chang'e hurriedly stopped Jiangchen. Don't go! The biggest enemy now is the land god of the sacred race. If you fight with Lin Lang Wetian now, even if you win, you will most likely be seriously injured. Nian Chang'e said. Let's deal with that land god first. When the time comes, you can cut Lin Lang Wetian into 1,000 pieces. We will do as you wish. Yes. Don't be angry, Mu Yude said. Jiangchen was naturally not angry, but he also understood that there would be a day when he would have to face Lin Lang Wentian. Now, since he couldn't deal with the land god, he would deal with Lin Lang Wentian first. As for whether he could defeat Lin Lang Wentian, Jiangchen didn't think about it at all. One had to know that with his current combat strength, he could suppress a demigod. If he faced a demigod, Jiangchen didn't think that he wouldn't have the strength to fight. Everyone, disperse and cultivate, Jiangchen said softly, looking into the distance, his eyes flashing with a trace of sharpness. In the end, everyone dispersed, only Mu Yude and Nian Chang'e stayed. Let's go to the heavenly temple, Jiangchen said, glancing at Nian Chang'e and smiling meaningfully. Nian Chang'e trembled when she was looked at. She felt that something big would happen on this trip to the heavenly temple. Of course, it wasn't about fighting, but some secrets might be exposed. Then, he might touch upon something forbidden. 3,000 big dreams, do you know what I dreamed of? On the way, Jiangchen stared at Nian Chang'e meaningfully. How would I know? Nian Chang'e muttered. I dreamed of a few old friends, Jiangchen said. Oh? You dreamed of old friends? Nian Chang'e looked stunned, but in fact, there were stormy waves in her heart. One had to know that the 3,000 big dreams was a dream of a life of nothingness. In a life of nothingness, how could one dream of old friends? At this moment, Nian Chang'e could roughly guess that something had happened to Jiangchen's 3,000 big dreams. He might have dreamed of something from his previous life. I dreamed of my junior brother, Jiangchen said softly, patted Nian Chang'e's shoulder, and said with a smile. He looks quite like you. Chapter 623. As soon as these words came out, Nian Chang'e trembled all over. At the same time, Mu Yude wiped the cold sweat off his brow. I'm afraid something big is about to happen. The two of you don't look right. Jiangchen patted Mu Yude's shoulder and asked curiously. What's wrong with you? Are your injuries that serious? You keep wiping the sweat off your brow. Of course not. Mu Yude hurriedly shook his head. He poked Nian Chang'e and glared at her. Although Nian Chang'e looked calm, his back was drenched in cold sweat. It's over. We're definitely going to get into trouble today. Nian Chang'e sighed helplessly in his heart. When the time came, Taoist Heaven Span would explain himself. Soon, they entered the Heaven Span temple. Taoist Heaven Span seemed to have known that Jiangchen would come, and had been waiting for him in the temple. When Taoist Tong Tian saw Jiangchen, he said with a smile, What do you want to say? You're the one who gave me the full supreme incantation? Jiangchen asked. You were my master in my previous life? Not just your previous life, Taoist Heaven Span said. When you were godly King Heaven Origin, I was your master as well. So, it's exactly the same as what I saw in my dream, Jiangchen murmured. But he was surprised that Taoist Heaven Span was not lying. After all, what Jiangchen saw in the 3,000 dreams might not be real. If Taoist Heaven Span shook his head today, Jiangchen would not believe it. But now, Taoist Heaven Span was admitting it. What else do you want to ask? Taoist Heaven Span asked. What happened back then? Jiangchen asked seriously. Who was I in my first life? Guess for yourself. Taoist Heavenspan said, pursing his lips. This time, he did not tell Jiangchen the truth. However, after thinking for a moment, he told Jiangchen, "The identity of your first life is a taboo. It's best not to talk about it. You see, actually, we all know about your identity in your first life, but we never mentioned it. I'm sure you can understand the reason behind this." "Well, tell me what happened back then," Jiangchen said, looking into Taoist Heavenspan's eyes. "I dreamed of it. You're not from the godless continent. Furthermore, he is not from the ninth firmament divine world." "That's right," Taoist Heavenspan said, nodding. Even as he opened his mouth to speak, a voice like thunder erupted from inside of him. This thunderous sound was extremely vast and terrifying. It was like the sound of a world collapsing. This sound was hard to describe. In short, it touched the soul and even the great Tao. "Don't ask. If you ask any more questions, something big will happen." Nyen Changa looked over at Taoist Heavenspan, and couldn't help but wonder why Taoist Heavenspan was willing to risk triggering the forbidden ruins to reveal such things. Could it be that Taoist Heavenspan had gone senile? "There are 6 Taoists in the world, and they correspond to 6 different worlds," Taoist Heavenspan said softly, the thunderous sound inside of him vanishing, as though he were forcibly suppressing it. However, even as he spoke, Jiangchen caught sight of a trace of red on Taoist Heavenspan's teeth. Had he just swallowed the blood he had just spat out? Just now, when Taoist Heavenspan said the word correct, did that mean he had triggered the forbidden ruins? 6 worlds? Jiangchen said, shocked. This was his first time hearing such a thing. In the past, Jiangchen had assumed that the world was very simple. The godless continent, the sky-flow world, the ninth firmament divine world, and the outland continent. But now, it seemed that the world was far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Back when Jiangchen was God King Heavenly Dawn, he had come into contact with many secrets. And yet, he still had no idea that there were 6 worlds, or that the 6 Taoists corresponded to 6 different worlds. "Now there's only the heaven world left," Taoist Heavenspan said. "The other 5 worlds are gone." Rumble! Rumble! Even as the words left his mouth, a terrifying sound echoed out from within Taoist Heavenspan. Taoist Heavenspan trembled, and blood oozed out of his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Then, he dropped to the ground, paralyzed. "What? Master!" Mu Yud and Yen Changa were both shocked. That was especially true of Mu Yud, who knew exactly how strong Taoist Heavenspan was. And yet he had been injured to this extent by the power of the forbidden ruins. If Taoist Heavenspan continued to speak, he... "Don't worry," Taoist Heavenspan said, waving his hand. "There are some things that you should know. I can block the power of the forbidden ruins, so I'm the only one who can speak. If it were the 2 of you, you'd be dead already. But the world inside of you," Muyud said, but quickly shut his mouth. After all, it was also a type of forbidden ruins. Too many things had happened in the past, and some of them had been engraved by the heavens, buried by the great Tao, and could not be mentioned. The god world of the 9 firmaments is the world of heaven. The godless continent used to be a part of the world of heaven, but was later separated by the world of heaven. A long time ago, as long as one continued to cultivate, anyone could reach godly ascension. There was no need to transcend godly tribulation. Back then, the godless continent was also a part of the god world of the 9 firmaments. But after the godless continent was separated, the natural laws, magical laws, order, and great Tao all changed. Because of that, it became very difficult for people to reach godly ascension. As he spoke, Taoist Heavenspan performed a double-handed incantation gesture to suppress the power of the forbidden ruins. Why did it have to be separated? Jiangchen asked. The godless continent is the last line of defense. It's also an intersection and a gap, Taoist Heavenspan said. Leaving this gap in the 9th heaven divine world is tantamount to giving the other side a chance to enter the 9th heaven divine world directly. So the god world of the 9 firmaments abandoned the godless continent, Jiangchen said coldly. Does that mean the living beings on the godless continent were abandoned? You could say that. Taoist Heaven Span nodded. Jiangchen smiled wryly. How laughable. People like us who were abandoned want to reach godly ascension. As of this point, Taoist Heaven Span didn't say anything further. After all, he had revealed far too much. He shouldn't have said these things in the first place. But now, he had triggered too many forbidden ruins, and had been suppressing them. Even with his heaven-defying strength, he couldn't continue. Let me say it. Suddenly, the living being from the third mountain appeared. He still looked like an illusory figure, but at this moment, he gave off the feeling of a great Tao. Greetings, human emperor. Humph. At this moment, Nian Chang'e was very respectful towards this creature. He cupped his hands and bowed. However, Mu Yude snorted coldly and said sarcastically, What human emperor? I stopped being one long ago. Underworld. Mu Yude, don't talk nonsense. Given your current strength, you can't withstand the power of the forbidden ruins, the human emperor said. He had originally wanted to call Mu Yude the Infernal King, but quickly changed his mind. Most likely, he didn't want Jiangchen to know who he was. Chapter 624. Mu Yude's identity was extraordinary. He used to be the Lord of the Underworld and was also known as the Lord of the Four Underworlds. However, ever since the accident in the Underworld, the word Lord of the Underworld had become forbidden and could not be mentioned. Now, the human emperor had come to reveal some information to Jiangchen. Naturally, the information he wanted to reveal was also forbidden. Therefore, he did not want to suffer the forbidden power for no reason just because of the word Lord of the Underworld. Human emperor? That's a big deal. Jiangchen was shocked. What did the human emperor mean? Dragons and phoenixes were the most powerful beings in the world, and humans were the majority. The word human emperor meant that he was the emperor of all humans in the world. He was the first among humans. It's all in the past. Don't mention it. The human emperor waved his hand. Although it was all in the past, when he mentioned the word human emperor, there was a trace of pride and sadness in his voice. He was proud of Renhuang, but he was sad because everything had become a thing of the past. Back to the truth. At this moment, the human emperor's expression turned serious and he said, The divine world of the nine heavens did not abandon the godless continent. They had no choice but to do so. If the divine world of the nine heavens had really abandoned the godless continent, then the creatures on the godless continent would have no chance to become gods. At this point, the human emperor's body trembled as if he had touched the forbidden power again. Even his originally illusory figure dimmed a little at this moment. Do you have anything else to ask? The human emperor frowned and said, My original body is still cultivating in seclusion. Now it's just a wisp of my remnant soul. I can't say much. Ask the important questions. Is he my junior brother? Jiangchen felt that there was nothing to ask. After all, he had touched the forbidden power too much. Taoist Tong Tian and the human emperor did not dare to say much. Nian Chang'e is your junior brother. That's only when you were immortal King Tian Yuan. The human emperor explained. As for the other lives, you and Nian Chang'e have nothing to do with each other. If there's anything, it's that your master is the same person. Jiangchen nodded involuntarily. Smiling at Nian Chang'e, he said, Apprentice younger brother? This? Nian Chang'e had a headache. Jiangchen had been reincarnated several times, and he was still his senior. This wasn't appropriate, right? Last question. All of a sudden, Jiangchen became very serious. He stared at the human emperor, and then glanced at Taoist Tong Tian. He said in a low voice, I dreamed of someone. It was something that happened when I was Divine King Tian Yuan. There was a black-clothed man who secretly attacked me when I was at my peak. He hit the back of my head with a club. He even stole many of my treasures. I just want to ask, do you know that person? In response, Taoist Heaven Span closed his eyes, almost as if he didn't know what to do. Or perhaps he was trying to avoid the question. The human emperor's expression turned even stranger. Without saying anything, he disappeared in a flash. Now that we're gone, the Qianzuan sect and the Jiang family will have no one to protect them. I'll go back and protect them, Mu Yude said seriously and turned to leave. However, before he could turn around, Jiang Chen grasped Mu Yude's shoulder. Looking pale, he said confusedly, "You look guilty." "No." Mu Yude shook his head and said, "I'm worried about the Qianzuan sect and the Jiang family. You know that the god of the divine clan is still around. I noticed that you were trying to avoid my gaze." Jiang Chen said in a deep voice, "That person couldn't be you, could he? Big brother. Are you kidding me? I'm from the same era as you. I was just born in this era." Mu Yude hurriedly explained, "If that person could secretly attack you, that means he's very strong. He's at least a god king, right? Look at me, I'm only a demigod now." "That's true." Jiang Chen muttered, "A scourge like you won't be able to live for so long. What are you talking about?" Mu Yude raised his eyebrows. "What are you talking about? Don't you know that good people don't pay with their lives, but scourges live for 1,000 years? Don't let me find that bastard." Jiang Chen spoke coldly. "I dreamt of it clearly. In my previous life as Divine King Tianyuan, that guy attacked me secretly, and even provoked me verbally. But I don't know who that guy is. Maybe he's already dead. How many eras have passed?" Nian Chang'e said softly as she glanced at Mu Yude. In fact, other than Jiang Chen, the human emperor, Taoist Heaven Span, and Nian Chang'e all knew who that person was. That person was Mu Yude. At that time, Mu Yude was known as one of the sources of darkness. At that time, Mu Yude had killed at least 50 god kings, if not 100. The number of god kings who had been harmed by Mu Yude in the dark was like the stars in the sky. There were so many of them that they were uncountable. "Let's go." Mu Yude waved his hand. "You see, Taoist Heaven Span didn't hesitate to suffer the backlash of the sealing power for you. You shouldn't disturb him." Thank you." Jiang Chen cupped his hands and bowed to Taoist Heaven Span. He looked a little suspicious, but he still left. After Jiang Chen and the others left, the human emperor appeared again. He stood next to Taoist Heaven Span and said, "Is the world in your body okay?" "It's fine. It's stable." Taoist Heaven Span shook his head. Then he asked worriedly, "How's the Eternal Citadel?" "It's blocked." The human emperor nodded, then shook his head. "The strongest people on both sides are half dead. The battle hasn't stopped yet. It's just some juniors fighting on the battlefield." "Oh? Juniors?" Taoist Heaven Span was stunned. Since when did the juniors fight in the Eternal Citadel? Could it be that something had happened in the Eternal Citadel? Or could it be that something had happened in the foreign realm? I don't know the details. I only know that a supreme being suddenly appeared in the Eternal Citadel, and reached an agreement with the foreign realm. The strongest people on both sides won't participate in the battle for the time being, and the juniors will be trained there," the human emperor said. When he said this, the human emperor and Taoist Heaven Span's hearts seemed to be in turmoil. An agreement? How could the foreign realm reach an agreement with the Eternal Citadel so easily? This was probably not an agreement, but an agreement made by the Supreme Being who suddenly appeared. Who is that Supreme Being who suddenly appeared? Did you recognize him? Taoist Heaven Span asked. I recognized him at first glance, but he doesn't seem to be him. The human emperor had a strange expression. He pointed at the door of the Heaven Span temple and said, "It's related to that guy." "Oh? Could it be?" Taoist Heaven Span glanced at the human emperor. Both of them narrowed their eyes, as if they were trying to guess each other's thoughts. "You're right. That guy has a body that's connected to the spirit. Moreover, according to the strength of that Supreme Being, it's been connected to the spirit for at least 100,000 years." The human emperor shuddered, as if he was afraid. Chapter 625. A corpse that gained sentience far surpassed ordinary creatures to begin with, let alone one that had gained sentience for 100,000 years. This also meant that after this corpse gained sentience, it had also cultivated for many years. A corpse that gained sentience, and then became a supreme being, just how terrifying was this strength? There were millions and millions of creatures in this world, and every creature had their own differences. For example, true dragons and true phoenixes were the most powerful creatures in this world. However, true dragons and true phoenixes also had differences in their so-called strength. True dragons were strong in their physical bodies, true phoenixes were strong in their souls. It could be said that every creature had their own strong points. However, some creatures were a bit different. They weren't creatures that should exist in this world, and could be said to be a type of accident. Among them, this included creatures that gained sentience from corpses. This type of creature originally shouldn't have appeared, but the creations of heaven and earth were ever-changing, unfathomable. There would always be some unexpected things that happened. The creatures that gained sentience from corpses were one of them, also known as corpse spirits, or holy spirits. This type of creature not only had a powerful physical body, even its soul was as inextinguishable as that brilliant sun. Once this type of creature grew up, it would definitely become a giant that dominated a region. Say, when that corpse spirit becomes a supreme being, just how terrifying is its strength? Taoist Heavenspan asked. Even the foreign realm was beaten until they made an agreement. Just how terrifying do you think it is? The human emperor said in a bad mood. However, both of them understood clearly that no matter how powerful that corpse spirit was, it couldn't sever the foreign realm. It was all because the foreign realm had a true monarch. That level of expert exceeded the limits of ordinary people's understanding, could be said to have surpassed everything. It was precisely because of this that the foreign realm, from ancient times until now, always stood above the 6 realms. Meanwhile, the 5 realms collapsed precisely because of the foreign realm, destroyed, invaded, and even sealed. Now, when that corpse spirit took action, the foreign realms seemed to have compromised, but in reality, the foreign monarch might not have truly taken action. If they really took action, how could a supreme being be the monarch's opponent? It seems like in those great battles back then, the foreign monarch's injuries weren't light either. Right now, they are probably still healing, the human emperor said. This is most likely the case. Otherwise, the foreign realm would have long gone to war. Why would they endure until now? Taoist Heavenspan said with a heavy voice. Speaking up to here, Taoist Heavenspan and the human emperor couldn't help but sigh. There was too much sorrow, too much helplessness, and even more pain in their hearts. Let's not talk about this for now. What do you think he will do next? Ren Huang's eyes flashed with curiosity. That him he was referring to was, of course, Jiangqin. What else is there to do? Taoist Heavenspan said angrily. Other than work on cultivation, do you think you're going to throw your life away? Boom! However, just as he finished speaking, the two of them heard an earth-shattering explosion from the direction of the underworld continent. Both Taoist Heavenspan and Taoist Heavenspan exchanged a surprised glance. Are you really going to throw your life away? At this moment, near the underworld continent's heavenly abyss, Jiangqin held the halberd in his hand and looked at the sacred race land god who was undoing the seal with a playful expression. He said, "Stop undoing it. I'll add as much as you can. Do you really want to die? Do you think that I can't kill you just because I don't attack you?" The land god roared angrily. Jiangqin had interrupted him twice in a row. Needless to say, he was furious. With your current strength, you are indeed invincible on the godless continent. But if we really hide, I'm afraid you won't be able to find us for a while, Jiangqin said mockingly. After saying that, Jiangqin waved the halberd in his hand and said, "Don't use your doppelgangers to deal with me. You might be able to deal with others, but don't use them on me. Today, I'll kill you first." The land god was furious. His real body moved out like a ferocious beast, charging straight at Jiangqin. Buzz! However, before he could rush to Jiangqin, Mu Yud, who had been ready for a long time, made his move. He had set up a formation in advance, and used a forbidden technique. The moment the land god made his move, he took Jiangchen away from this place, and erased his traces and aura. Only Jiangchen's light words floated in the air. "I'll visit you again next time. Whether you are Jiangchen, Tianchen, or Tianyuan, I'll kill you today." The land god was furious. With a long roar, the sky above his head cracked open. Cracks appeared in the void, and black lightning exploded in the void. He spread out his divine consciousness, trying to find Jiangchen's traces. On this day, all the living beings on the godless continent saw a shocking scene. Eyes could be seen all over the place. Even some of the hidden small worlds had these eyes. This was the land god's divine ability. He opened his heavenly eyes and searched for Jiangchen's traces. What terrifying strength! Is there anyone who can escape his eyes under this divine ability? Sigh. Jiangchen is going to die. However, one day later, these eyes disappeared, and there was no news of Jiangchen's death. At the same time, in a small world on the godless continent, Mu Yuda's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his back was cold. An array was rotating under his feet, and the stars in the sky fell and covered the entire small world. This was the heavenly cycle-stellar array, but it had been modified by Mu Yude into the heavenly cycle concealment array. It was because of this tactical formation that the sacred race's land god could not find Jiangchen. However, Mu Yude knew that the land god wasn't really angry. Otherwise, with the means of a land god, how could a mere heavenly cycle concealment array hide from his eyes? It seemed that this was most likely a warning to Jiangchen. Damn it! Mu Yude cursed. I haven't recovered from my injuries, and now I have to waste my blood to set up this heavenly cycle concealment array. Jiangchen, do you really think I can't die? Forget it, I haven't settled the score with you about Nianchang's and my physical bodies. Jiangchen sat cross-legged and said softly, Wait for me to cultivate for a while, then I'll visit him. Next time? You're courting death, Mu Yude said in a deep voice. This time he's just reminding you. The next time you go, he'll definitely be furious. At that time, even my heavenly cycle concealment array won't be able to save you. Next time, I'll hide somewhere else, Jiangchen said mockingly. He already had a plan in mind. Why do I have a feeling of panic in my heart? Taoist Heavenspan frowned. He had a feeling that someone was harboring ill intentions toward him. The human emperor shivered and muttered, Which bastard wants to plot against me? Humph! Let's see if you dare to come again. A mere reincarnated body, who hasn't even become a god, dares to be so presumptuous in front of me? You're really courting death. At this moment, the land god of the Holy Clan snorted coldly. He firmly believed that after this incident, Jiangchen would definitely not dare to come again. Chapter 626. Time passed slowly. The land gods of the sacred race were very quiet during this period of time. They were focused on unlocking Tianyuan's seal. This made the living beings of the godless continent worried. At the same time, many people were puzzled. What was Jiangchen doing during this period of time? Did Jiangchen not want to care about the godless continent anymore? After so long, he had not stopped the land gods of the sacred race. Could it be that Tianchen has abandoned us? Sigh. Tianchen used to be the guardian of the godless continent, but now... Many people sighed and sighed. However, how many people remembered that when Jiangchen was being chased by the martial pavilion, how many people stood up to help him? Now that things were serious, they wanted Jiangchen to take action. They used to call Jiangchen the abandoned son of the Jiang family, but now they called him Tianchen the Divine King. The difference between the two titles was too big. The outside world doesn't have a good opinion of you. In a small world, Nianchanga stood beside Jiangchen and asked, You really don't plan to take action? Jiangchen chuckled and said, Everyone used to call me the abandoned son of the Jiang family, but now the entire godless continent calls me Tianchen the Divine King. You and I know what they are thinking. If the door of darkness is opened, the godless continent will be gone. Nyanchanga said. Why do you care what others say? I have never cared about what the world thinks. Jiangchen said softly and pointed to the small world. The people I want to protect are all here. What does the outside world have to do with me? You really don't plan to take action? Mu Yud was stunned. He could not believe that Jiangchen had really given up. This can't be right? I'll tell you the truth. Suddenly, Jiangchen's face turned pale. He pointed to himself and said, I'm not in a good state right now, so I can't take action. What's wrong with you? Nyanchanga asked hurriedly. I don't know, there's some throbbing in my soul. Jiangchen frowned. I can't use my full strength. There's a problem with the soul. Mu Yuda said worriedly. Normally, there won't be any problems with the soul. But if there really is a problem, it will be very serious. I've been trying to figure out what went wrong all this time, but I haven't been able to figure it out. Jiangchen let out a long sigh. If there weren't any problems with my soul, I would have taken action long ago. What should we do now? Nyanchanga asked in a deep voice. Hearing this, Jiangchen smiled bitterly. What could he do? Judging from the situation, he could only wait for death. Damn it! If you hadn't brought my physical body to the third mountain, would my physical body have gained sentience? If I fuse with my physical body, a mere land god is nothing, Nyanchanga said in a deep voice. Isn't your master on good terms with the human sovereign? Why don't you ask the human sovereign to give your physical body to him? Mu Yud said awkwardly. Jiangchen and Nyanchanga's bodies were psychic, which was beyond his expectation. If he had known this would happen, he would not have hidden the two corpses in the third mountain. No! I have to go to the third mountain. I have to destroy the sentience of that physical body. Nyanchanga stood up. He had no other choice now. He did not know what was going on with Jiangchen, but he suddenly could not use his full strength. Therefore, he was the only one who could stop the land god of the divine clan. However, since the physical body had gained sentience, it had its own consciousness. If Nyanchanga wanted to fuse with his physical body, he had to destroy the sentience of the physical body first. You might not be a match for that physical body, Mu Yud said with a strange expression. I saw him last time. After your physical body gained sentience, your cultivation level reached the level of a demigod. Hearing this, Nyanchanga was immediately dumbfounded. Above the level of a demigod? Nyanchanga was only at Heaven's Decay Stage 5. After his physical body gained sentience, his cultivation level reached the level of a demigod? This was not appropriate, right? However, it was normal when he thought about it carefully. After all, when Nyanchanga shed his physical body, he left most of his cultivation in his physical body. Now that his physical body had gained sentience, it must have activated most of his cultivation. You will go with me. Let's work together to destroy the sentience of my physical body, Nyanchanga said. However, as soon as they walked out of the small world, they saw a passage of divine light appear on the third mountain. In the passage of divine light, a man was walking in the air. What the F asterisk CK? I % asterisk Y to the power of T caret asterisk. Nyanchanga cursed. His face was black with anger. Because that was the path to the divine realm. Someone had become a god. He was ascending. And that person was Nyanchanga's physical body. My physical body became a god? Nyanchanga was completely dumbfounded after cursing for a while. From the looks of it, he seems to have become a god and gone to the divine realm of the ninth heaven. Mu Yud wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said weakly, I didn't expect this. I really want to kill you. Nyanchanga stared at Mu Yud and pointed at his physical body that was ascending. What do you think we should do now? Nothing. Mu Yud smiled bitterly. He's already ascended. We can't drag him back, right? Besides, the day he ascends is the day he becomes a true god. Even if you and I work together now, we can't stop him. Then my physical body is gone just like that. Nyanchanga was anxious. Wait until you ascend to the divine realm of the ninth heaven, Mu Yud muttered. Take it slow. We'll find him eventually. Nyan Changa was speechless. This was too big of a mess. You can't joke like this, right? My physical body is still on the godless continent, but my physical body has become a god and left by itself? Are you trying to trick me? Go back! At this moment, Nyan Changa's face was dark. He returned to the small world with a sullen face. Mu Yud scratched his head and asked, What should we do now? Let's leave it to fate, Nyan Changa said angrily. My physical body is gone. I can't recover to my peak for the time being. That land god of the sacred clan. I can't control him. Then, just wait for death. Mu Yud smiled bitterly. However, Mu Yud was not nervous or worried at all. Because he knew very well that the godless continent was not important. Even if the godless continent was gone, it was not important to Mu Yud, Taoist Tong Tian, and the human emperor. As long as the divine realm of the ninth heaven did not fall, there was hope. Moreover, even if the door of darkness was opened and the creatures of the other world entered the godless continent, as long as Taoist Tong Tian and the human emperor were still there, it was not a problem to protect the Qianzuan sect and the Jiang family. They could even leave the last pure land for the godless continent. 3 days later, Jiangchen suddenly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of Tianyuan. He said in a deep voice, It's time to act. We can't wait any longer. Jiangchen felt that the seal of Tianyuan was getting weaker and weaker. It was about to be broken. Chapter 627. For some reason, Jiang Chen's soul kept throbbing, as if something was trying to seize his soul power. Or rather, it was as if something was brewing in his soul, absorbing his soul power, as if it was about to break out of his body. Because of this, Jiang Chen hadn't made a move during this period of time. But now, if he didn't make a move, it would be too late. Since no one was stopping the sacred race's land god, he had been unlocking the seal very smoothly. Now, Jiang Chen could feel that the seal of Heaven Abyss was getting weaker and weaker, almost like a piece of paper, unable to withstand a single blow. Are you really going to make a move? Mu Yud said in a deep voice. In your current state, there will be a battle eventually. Jiang Chen sighed. Besides, I'm not going to fight to the death, I'm just going to obstruct him. But this time, if you really anger him. Nyan Changa frowned, worry flashing in his eyes. Previously, the sacred race's land god was obviously angry. But he wasn't really angry, he just wanted to intimidate Jiangchen. But this time, it was different. If Jiangchen made a move to obstruct him again, the sacred race's land god would definitely be angry. At that time, even if he used a concealment array, he wouldn't be able to escape the detection of the land god. Most importantly, Jiang Chen's current state wasn't good. Let's go. At this moment, Jiang Chen whispered and walked out of the small world, but after a few steps, his face suddenly turned pale. The throbbing of his soul became more and more intense, as if his entire soul was about to explode. At this moment, Jiang Chen could clearly feel that something was about to break out of his soul. Then, what was the thing in his soul? For Jiang Chen, was it a blessing or a curse? Jiang Chen didn't dare to say this, and he didn't have the mood to guess at this moment. He stabilized the throbbing in his soul, held the sky halberd, and tore through the void. In a short moment, Jiang Chen arrived near Heaven Abyss. You still dare to come? The land god's face darkened when he saw Jiang Chen. Now, giving him another several incense sticks worth of time, Heaven Abyss's seal would be undone. And at the last moment, Jiang Chen actually came. Aren't you afraid of death? The land god shouted angrily. I'm afraid of death. Jiang Chen whispered. It's precisely because I'm afraid of death that I came to stop you. If you dare to stop me today, no one in this world can save you. The land god roared. Don't think that you can be lawless just because those two people are protecting you. You have to know that those two people can't make a move. I know. Jiang Chen nodded. But so what? I'm here today, So what can you do about it? Are you angry? 1. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiangchen stomped his foot into the void. In an instant, golden lotuses bloomed under his feet and rose one after another, covering his entire body like stars. Then, runes and formation patterns appeared together, like a group of falling stars, blessing Heaven Abyss's seal. You're courting death. Today I must kill you. The land god was furious. He directly gave up on undoing the seal and used his main body. As he took a step forward, he tore open the void, and he pressed his left hand into the void, and he grabbed a black lightning bolt of the void, and threw it at Jiangchen. I'm only here to stop you, not to fight to the death with you. Jiangchen whispered, his figure constantly retreating, at the same time adding a few more seals to Heaven Abyss. However, this time, the land god was determined to kill Jiangchen. No matter how Jiangchen retreated, it was difficult for him to escape from the land god's pursuit. Just like this, Jiangchen used all his strength and kept retreating, often jumping in the void and moving between the mountains and rivers. Many people saw this scene and marveled at Jiangchen's courage. However, everyone knew that when a land god really wanted to kill, with Jiangchen's cultivation, he would definitely die. Sigh, he's going to die in the end. I thought he wouldn't attack again. I didn't expect. So what? At this point, the godless continent will be destroyed and he will also die. Many people sighed, their hearts were filled with helplessness and despair. At this moment, Jiangchen's face was also ugly. He used the concealment technique but still couldn't escape the land god's perception. You can't escape! The land god shouted. His speed was as fast as it could be. In a flash, he was like a bolt of lightning. Before Jiangchen could react, his palm had already landed on Jiangchen. Bang! The land god's palm was extremely terrifying. It could even penetrate a world, let alone Jiangchen's body. It was only a palm strike, but Jiangchen's body was smashed. Even his holy soul became dimmer. If it weren't for the myriad transformation heavenly lamp protecting his soul and divine soul, this palm would have been enough to kill Jiangchen. Myriad transformation heavenly slash! At this moment, Jiangchen didn't dare to hold back. The myriad transformation heavenly lamp burned with raging flames and a cold light slashed out. Puff! The next moment, under the horrified gaze of everyone, one of the land god's arms was cut off. What? He cut off a god's arm with the strength of a mortal body. What's that cold light? Isn't it too terrifying? Quite a few people cried out in alarm. That streak of cold light simply made them tremble. Myriad transformation heavenly lamp? Why is this Tao soul with you? The land god of the Holy Clan exclaimed. His arm had already been reforged. However, he didn't continue to attack. Instead, he stared at Jiangchen with fear and doubt in his eyes. Why can't it be with me? Jiangchen raised his eyebrows. Not only is it with me, but it also lit up the wick. This Tao soul shouldn't have appeared. It has already disappeared. The land god of the Holy Clan said in a deep voice. This is a forbidden trace. It has already disappeared. It shouldn't have appeared. What is a forbidden trace? Since it has appeared, it's not a forbidden trace. Jiangchen said coldly. Don't force me. Force you? With your cultivation, why should I force you? The land god of the Holy Clan said contemptuously. If it weren't for your amazing movement technique, I would have already killed you. Boom! The moment his voice fell, the surrounding dragon veins rolled up and turned into huge chains, instantly wrapping around Jiangchen's body. This was the power of a god, it could mobilize the foundation of all things. Jiangchen was shocked, the power in his body rioted, as if the heavenly star was about to explode, the essence of his body was burning. Inside the gate of great Tao in his body, waves of great Tao rose and fell, the power of great Tao was like a chaotic mist, condensing in Jiangchen's hand. Break! With a long roar, Jiangchen's palm suddenly pressed into the void, and the dragon vein shackles around his body shattered. However, the land god's attack also fell on Jiangchen's body. At this moment, Jiangchen was in despair. He felt the punch of the land god and could feel his body completely disintegrating, even his soul turning into fragments. At the last moment between life and death, Jiangchen murmured, "Is this the end of my life? I can't accept it." Chapter 628. Even a saint body couldn't withstand the attack of a land god. His divine soul also dissipated, and even his soul blossomed like fireworks. It was beautiful but sad. Only the myriad change heavenly lamp didn't break. It floated in the air, burning faintly as if it was sending Jiangchen off. At this moment, the world was watching, and all the creatures in the world lamented. The reincarnation of a divine king had encountered troubled times and couldn't rise again. Some were sad, some were helpless, and most of them were sad. Who would have thought that the godless continent would usher in a prosperous era? But it was also troubled times, and it was an era of destruction. Mu Yu De! If you gave him the body of Tianxian divine king, would he be like this? I'll kill you! In the small world, Nian Changa went berserk. He grabbed Mu Yude's collar, and his aura surged. The 72 lotuses had already appeared. He was about to explode with anger and grief. If Jiangchen could merge with Tianxian divine king's body, how could he end up like this? Now, his body was gone, and his soul was gone. He only had a Tao soul. If either of our bodies had fused together, how could the godless continent have fallen to such a state? How could he die? Nian Changa roared, his eyes red. Around him, Bai Feng Yu and the others had tears on their faces. They saw the scene in the distance, and saw the myriad change heavenly lamp. He's gone, Master, is gone. Boss. Everyone was strangely calm. No one shouted or cried out. No one cried out in grief. Perhaps because they were too sad, they couldn't even cry or howl. Mu Yude lowered his head. He was very upset. He blamed himself and felt guilty. As Nian Changa had said, if he hadn't stolen those two corpses, either Jiangchen or Nian Changa would have been able to fight against the sacred race's gods on land by merging with their bodies. But now, it was too late for regrets. Damn it, if only I knew what good and evil were. Mu Yu sighed. If he knew what was good and what was evil, the seal in his body would automatically be broken. At that time, all the gods of the continent of the 9 clouds would tremble under his feet. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. In the end, we can't escape this calamity. Taoist Heavenspan stood in front of the Heavenspan God Temple, looking off into the distance. Sighing, he turned and headed inside. There was too much helplessness in his heart. Now that the flower had withered, there was no more hope in this world. Perhaps there was, but at the very least, there was none at the moment. Ha! In the end, he is dead. The human emperor whispered with sarcasm and mockery. However, it was difficult to hide the loneliness in his heart. Little brother is dead? At this moment, in the Jiang family's small world, Jian Yuli looked up at the sky. She didn't know why tears were falling from the corners of her eyes. She didn't know why her heart ached so much. She also didn't know that at the moment she was sad, the moon in the sky had turned blood red. Ha! In this way, who in this world can stop me? The land god of the sacred race laughed wildly. Jiang Chen's death was undoubtedly a good thing for him. From now on, no one could stop him. When the door of darkness opened and the foreign army entered the godless continent, he would be the top contributor. At that time, there would be no need to worry about being conferred the title of king. Screech! Right when everyone was grieving, a voice that sounded like the cry of a phoenix resounded throughout godless continent. At this moment, everyone looked over and saw that in the burning candle flame in the myriad change heavenly lamp, there was a creature crying out. It was covered in raging flames as if it could burn everything in the world. It looked like a phoenix, but it didn't look like one. It was reborn in the fire, flapping its wings and flying out of the lamp flame. Finally, with a long cry, the lamp flame suddenly burst out with endless radiance, and an undying bird appeared. Its wings stretched for more than 1,000 miles, and the flames on its body burned half the sky red. At the same time, there was a ball of soul light burning between its eyebrows. That's the undying bird! It's the Tao Soul! Jiang Chen's Tao Soul, the undying bird! At this moment, Nian Chang'e and the others exclaimed. Even Jiang Chen was dead, so what was going on with the Tao Soul of the undying bird? Back then, Jiang Chen had personally destroyed his Tao Soul of the undying bird. Now that he was dead, why did the Tao Soul appear again? Could it be that it was reborn after its Tao Soul was destroyed like me? Nian Chang'e stared at the undying bird and saw the soul light between its eyebrows. Whoosh! However, before everyone could take a closer look, the myriad change heavenly lamp escaped into the void and disappeared with the undying bird. No one knew where they had gone, not even the gods of the land. Humph! He's dead, and only 2 Tao souls are left. What's the use of that? The land god curled his lips and didn't care at all. He returned to Heaven Abyss and opened the seal again. Interesting. Taoist Heaven Span was in the Heaven Span God Temple, and a smile could be seen on his face. Flowers bloom, flowers fade, flowers bloom. With a wave of his hand, he pulled Nian Chang'e to his side from thousands of miles away. Did anything unusual happen to Jiang Chen during this period? Taoist Tongtian asked. Master, before he died, his soul kept throbbing, as if something was about to break out of his body. Nian Chang'e said truthfully, but there was sadness in his voice. Before he died? Taoist Tongtian smiled. He didn't die. Just like his Tao soul, he was reborn from the fire and underwent nirvana once. He didn't die? Really? Where is he? Nian Chang'e grabbed Taoist Tongtian's arm excitedly. I don't know. The myriad change heavenly lamp hid its aura, so I couldn't detect it for a while. The myriad change heavenly lamp is the first Tao soul since ancient times. It has spirituality, and now it's protecting its master. Then, when will he come back? Nian Chang'e asked. I don't know. Maybe a long time, or maybe tomorrow. Taoist Tongtian waved his hand and said, Go back. Nian Chang'e felt much better after hearing that Jiang Chen was still alive. However, Taoist Tongtian was asking him to go back now. Master? Are you in charge of receiving or not sending me? Nian Chang'e was stunned. What? Do I have to take responsibility for you? Taoist Tongtian frowned, seemingly displeased. Don't hang out with Mu Yud. He's not a good person. That bastard. Nian Chang'e's face darkened. The thought of his fleshly body becoming a god filled his heart with disgust. Master, who exactly is Mu Yud? Nian Chang'e asked. Of course, Nian Chang'e knew that Mu Yud was the Lord of the Four Abysses, the Infernal King. But if he really was the Infernal King, how could Mu Yud have become like this? He would have created a forbidden land and ignored worldly affairs like the human emperor. Chapter 629. One had to know that they were all people of status, not to mention that Mu Yud was once the lord of the underworld. How could such a person be willing to mix with mortals? Wouldn't that be degrading? Him? I don't know what he's up to. Taoist Heavenspan said in a deep voice. Be careful of him. There was a dark war in the past, and he was also involved. Which war? Nian Chang'e narrowed his eyes and was shocked. Since ancient times, there had been several dark wars, but they were all resolved. However, every time there was a dark war, the heavens would bleed, and the gods would be like grass. More than half of the living beings in the world died. Especially those 3 dark wars, which were called the darkest years of the world. The War of the End of the World, Taoist Heavenspan said. What? He was involved in the War of the End of the World. Nian Chang'e almost screamed. Because the War of the End of the World was one of the 3 most chaotic wars. Moreover, it was also after that war that the laws and order of the world changed. And in that war, almost all the gods died, and less than 10 or 20% of the living beings in the world died. Of course, It was not the darkest war, but it was the war with the highest death toll. Do you think the people of the underworld are good people? The dignified underworld king is not a kind person, Taoist Heavenspan said. Then why keep him alive? Nianchang asked. There is no real evidence. Taoist Heavenspan sighed. Everyone knows that he did it, but there is no evidence. Besides, now that the underworld has fallen and been sealed, he is a pitiful person, and we don't want to pursue so much for the time being. Of course, it was a lie to say that they did not pursue the matter. The main reason was that Taoist Heavenspan could not do anything. Okay, go back. Taoist Heavenspan said softly. Wait for his return. Yes. Nianchanga nodded, cupped his hands, and left the place. The following days were very peaceful. No one stopped the land god of the Holy Clan, and the living beings in the world could only pray and despair. In the small world, Nianchanga focused on his cultivation and did not say a word. He did not even tell anyone that Jiangchen was still alive, because he had a feeling that perhaps some of the people around him were unreliable. At the same time, in a dark void at the chaotic boundary, an undying bird turned into the size of a palm and perched on top of the lamp. Between the undying bird's eyebrows, there was a ball of soul light flickering, and the light was gradually becoming brighter. I'm not dead? Jiang Chen's consciousness had already recovered. After knowing that he was not dead, he was also puzzled. You're my master. If I want to be reborn, I'll take you with me. The undying bird Tao spirit seemed to have gained intelligence. It could actually speak. No wonder my soul was throbbing earlier. My soul power was also being devoured by something. So it was you. Jiangchen was relieved. Back then, how did you feel when you destroyed me with your own hands? The undying bird Tao spirit asked mockingly. Hearing this, Jiangchen felt rather awkward, and said, Haven't you gotten your revenge now? I also died for you. But you're alive again. The undying bird Tao spirit said, We're even. Yes, we're even. Jiangchen smiled and said, But you're still my Tao spirit, and I'm still your master. That's right. The undying bird Tao spirit nodded and said with a serious expression, After a phoenix is reborn, it's still a phoenix. But do you know what happens after the undying bird is reborn? Hearing this, Jiangchen was stunned. He had never heard of such a thing. What is it? After thinking for a long time, Jiangchen could not think of a name, so he could only, humbly, ask for guidance. Of course it's still the undying bird. The undying bird Tao spirit said with annoyance. Do you mean after I'm reborn, I'll become a phoenix? A real dragon? Are you stupid? I can really crush you with one slap. Jiangchen was furious. He felt that he had been tricked by his own Tao spirit. Are you trying to challenge the limits of my IQ? But I've changed a little. The undying bird Tao spirit mumbled. Maybe I can evolve again. Hearing this, Jiangchen's heart skipped a beat. He asked weakly, Reborn again? What else? We're different from the other races. If we want to become stronger, we need to be reborn continuously. The undying bird Tao spirit said. Then, can you not bring me along next time? Jiangchen's face darkened. You're my master. If I'm reborn, you'll have to be reborn too. The undying bird Tao spirit said. Don't worry, I won't be reborn if I'm not confident. That's good. Jiangchen sighed. He thought, how did I end up with such a Tao spirit? Not only did it gain intelligence, but it also wanted to be reborn with its master. To put it nicely, it was nirvana, but in reality, it was just courting death. Focus on reforging your physical body and soul. When you return, you'll realize that you're different after being reborn. The undying bird Tao spirit said meaningfully. Maybe you'll be able to fight against the land god then. Really? Jiangchen was doubtful. He didn't believe it. One rebirth would allow him to fight against the land god with his Heaven's Blight stage cultivation level? Wasn't that bullsh*t? No matter how strong he was, he couldn't cross such a boundary. Just wait and see. The undying bird Tao spirit said. Then, the place fell into silence. Jiang Chen's soul landed on the undying bird Tao spirit and was slowly being reforged. Time continued to pass. Until 10 days later, buzz! On this day, in Heavenly Abyss, a series of explosions sounded. The seal on Heavenly Abyss was disintegrating. The land god of the sacred clan roared. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. Today, the seal on Heavenly Abyss would be completely broken. At that time, he would rush into Heavenly Abyss and open the door of darkness. The era of the godless continent would come to an end. Yo, I haven't seen you for 10 days. Why hasn't the seal been broken yet? Suddenly, a mocking voice rang out. Following that, a raging flame erupted from the void. A young man with a halberd in his hand stepped out from the void, bringing with him a torrential blaze. Huh! It's you? The land god of the sacred clan stared at the young man in front of him with surprise and disbelief. I'm sorry, I'm not dead. Jiang Chen smiled. He pointed at the flames on his body and asked, Do you like it? This is the sky-burning flame. Get lost! The land god of the sacred clan shouted angrily. Don't stop me at the last moment. Otherwise, I'll kill you even if I have to sacrifice everything. We're old friends. Don't you know what I'm going to do? Jiang Chen smiled. Buzz. As soon as his voice fell, Jiang Chen formed a seal with his hands. The raging flames turned into runes and sprinkled on Heavenly Abyss. At this moment, the seal, which had been on the verge of collapse, recovered thanks to Jiang Chen's help. Moreover, these seals carried the sky-burning flame. The sky-burning flame was one of the most primitive flames in the world. Since the creation of the world, this flame belonged to the chaos, and was only controlled by the most powerful undying bird in the world. Now, Jiang Chen's undying bird Tao spirit had undergone nirvana and naturally controlled the sky-burning flame. The power of the sky-burning flame was something that even the gods had to be wary of. Chapter 630. The seal was strengthened and even burned with heaven-burning flames. The scorching temperature caused the void to distort. Even in the flames there were strands of divine light flickering like divine light, giving people a profound feeling. The Saint Clan's god exploded with anger. He ignored the seal and directly rushed towards Jiang Chen. Do you know that I can't use forbidden techniques in the bloody path? Jiang Chen kept retreating, forming seals with both hands, and said mockingly, But the godless continent is my home ground. Forbidden techniques. Heh, all forbidden techniques. What are they in front of a god? You have to know that you are just a mortal now, and I am a god of the land. The Saint Clan's god said coldly. Is that so? Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows. A seal appeared in his palm, and then he threw it into the air. This seal was like a rising sun, piercing through the sky and shooting straight into the 9 heavens. At this moment, many gods in the 9 heavens divine world sensed this seal. A few of them even had a trace of excitement in their eyes. They used to be Jiang Chen's subordinates. Now that they felt the aura coming from the seal, they naturally knew that it was done by Jiang Chen. He's still alive! Deity King! Soon, someone in the 9 heavens divine world made a move and poured his divine power into the seal. The seal exploded in an instant, and then the divine power broke through the boundary wall. Like an upside-down galaxy, it directly fell on Jiang Chen's body. This technique was the God-vanquishing technique. God-vanquishing technique! The Saint Clan's god exclaimed. He could clearly feel that Jiang Chen's aura was skyrocketing. From the celestial realm, it soared all the way to the demigod realm, and then to the demigod realm. In the end, he was only one step away from becoming a god of the land. I am a demigod realm expert, but you dare to fight a god of the land? Jiang Chen held the halberd and sighed softly in his heart. God-vanquishing technique, after all, can't surpass a god. Even so, with Jiang Chen's combat strength, he could probably fight a god of the land. What a joke! No matter how strong you are still an ant in front of the gods of the land, the land god said disdainfully. A flowing light was rotating in his palm. It turned into an axe that seemed to be able to split the sky. He threw it at Jiangchen hard. 6 calamities! Calamities! Man-made calamities! At this moment, the halberd in Jiangchen's hand swept out, and an obscure ripple erupted. At the same time, he flicked the halberd in his hand into the air and shattered the land god's attack. Moreover, the obscure ripple entered the void and slammed into the land god. Ha! In an instant, the land god narrowed his eyes and felt that something was wrong with his body. Like a mortal, he seemed to be sick. Impossible! The god frowned. He was a god, how could he fall sick? Even if something went wrong in his cultivation and he died from chi deviation, it was impossible for him to fall sick. Man-made calamities, calamities, flesh, and 5 organs, Jiangchen said softly. Feel the pain of a mortal. How can a mere disease hurt my body? The god roared angrily, and the divine power in his body erupted, trying to get rid of the disease in his body. However, the man-made calamities, one of the 6 calamities, couldn't be removed so easily. Of course, the god also felt that although he seemed to be sick, it wouldn't endanger his life at all. After a few breaths, he gave up and raised his hand to attack Jiangchen. Ha! Jiangchen chuckled, held the halberd in his hand, and slashed out. Boom! A few violent explosions sounded. This was the first head-on collision between Jiangchen and the land god. Under the explosion, radiance danced, and Jiangchen vomited blood and was sent flying. But on the way, the inextinguishable fire burned on his body, and his injuries were healed in a few breaths. What? The land god stood on the spot and exclaimed in surprise. He couldn't believe that an ant above the demigod realm could survive a head-on collision with him. This was a bit heaven-defying, right? No! There's something in your body, the land god said in a deep voice. He opened his heavenly eye and saw an undying bird crying in Jiangchen's soul. On the undying bird, the undying fire burned with the heaven-burning fire. The 2 great flames burned and turned into wisps of inconspicuous divine light that covered every part of Jiangchen's body. It was these 2 great flames that helped Jiangchen block a lot of damage. Let's see how long your forbidden technique can last. At this moment, the land god became calmer and calmer. He stood on the spot and didn't make a move, waiting for the god-vanquishing technique to disappear. As long as the deity subduing method disappeared, Jiangchen would be as weak as an ant in front of him. Just as you said, Jiangchen said mockingly. Without the god-vanquishing technique, I am indeed no match for you. But now, with my strength, if I want to leave, can you stop me? Even if you leave, I can still find you. From today onwards, no matter where you are, I will find you and kill you, the land god roared. After being obstructed by Jiangchen several times, he was completely furious. Is that so? Then I hope you can find me. Jiangchen laughed and took out the myriad transformations heavenly lamp. The light enveloped his body and then he escaped into the void. As soon as Jiangchen disappeared, the land god exerted a theurgy. He opened his heavenly eye and spread out his divine sense. Like clones, he appeared in every corner of the godless continent. He thought that Jiangchen had escaped, but he didn't know that when he spread out his divine sense, a black shadow quietly appeared behind him. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. The land god never thought that someone would be so bold as to approach him. Bang! The next moment, without waiting for the land god to react, a heavenly halberd suddenly appeared and fiercely hit the back of his head. Pooh! A mouthful of blood spurted out from the land god's mouth. His body staggered, and even his divine soul and soul trembled. This attack couldn't be said to be fierce, it could only be said to be too vicious. The land god was dumbfounded by the actions of the Black Hand. Excuse me, are you looking for me? At this moment, Jiangchen retreated 1,000 meters, shook the heavenly halberd in his hand, and said mockingly, as expected of a land god. With the body of a god, my attack couldn't even break your dog head. Brat! I will kill you! The land god was furious. He formed a seal with both hands, and his divine power surged as if he was about to use some kind of divine ability. Pooh! However, when he was halfway through forming the hand seal, a black dagger suddenly rushed out of the void and nailed the top of his head. Hiding in the darkness, walking in the night, with the black wind on my body, I am the king of the darkness. A voice that Jiang Chen was very familiar with sounded. Chapter 631. Hearing this voice, Jiang Chen was a little surprised, and a chill ran down his back. It was all because this voice was too familiar to Jiang Chen. Mu Xingyun! Jiang Chen's eyes focused, looking at the Mu Xingyun who was currently standing in the distance with one hit, his pupils constricting. The affairs of the world are important. Today, let's put aside the grudges between you and me for the time being. Mu Xingyun said mockingly. Don't worry, your life will be mine sooner or later. Jiang Chen's brows furrowed slightly when he heard that. Staring at Mu Xingyun, he was endlessly shocked in his heart. All because since parting on the bloody path, Mu Xingyun's present cultivation actually reached half-deity. This cultivation speed was a little illogical. How did you cultivate to half-deity? Jiang Chen asked. One had to know, the present era was different from the past. In this era, after cultivating to Deva fifth blight, one had to transcend the divine tribulation and ascend from there. It was simply impossible to appear this realm of half-deity. Only by going through special cultivation methods, or obtaining some kind of ancient inheritance, could one break through this kind of shackles. Jiang Lu, Nian Chang'e, and the rest, how powerful were their talents. But currently, they were merely Deva fifth blight and were still unable to break through the shackles. Relatively speaking, Mu Xingyun's talent was more or less the same as Nian Chang'e and the rest, but he broke through the shackles and reached half-deity cultivation. There must be some ulterior motive in this. I'm destined to be the king in the darkness. Mu Xingyun was very proud and aloof, saying, If the world can do it, I can do it. If the world is difficult, I can also do it. You obtained some kind of ancient inheritance? Jiang Chen said in a solemn voice. Night Devil King. Mu Xingyun did not hide it, but he thought that Jiang Chen would not know what the Night Devil King was. However, Jiang Chen knew a lot of secrets, and naturally heard of Night Devil King these 3 words before. At this moment, Jiang Chen was moved. He had never thought that the Dark Night Demon King's inheritance would appear in the world, and even be obtained by Mu Xingyun. No wonder Mu Xingyun was able to break through the shackles. One had to know that the Night Demon King was known as the #1 assassin in history. The era he lived in was not only a glorious era, but also a dark era under his rule. That era was filled with blood, but there was also light and order. However, that era was too far away from the present. There was already a gap of several eras. Many people thought that the inheritance of the Dark Night Demon King would never appear and disappear forever. But who would have thought that not only had the inheritance appeared, but it had also fallen into the hands of Jiang Chen's nemesis, Mu Xingyun? Could it be that he really is destined to be the king of assassins? Jiang Chen whispered. You too! You are courting death! At this moment, the land god flew into a rage, his eyes turning red. First, he was hit by Jiang Chen's sneak attack. The back of his head was ruthlessly smashed, causing him to feel dizzy. Just now, it was even more satisfying. The top of his head had been pierced through, and his entire soul had almost been obliterated. For a land god, this was simply a disgrace. Let's talk next time. Mu Xingyun was as decisive as ever. Seeing that the land god was about to go berserk, he immediately retreated. Jiang Chen did not dare to hesitate, he did not dare to fight recklessly with the land god. In the next moment, both of them disappeared into the void, using their own methods to conceal their aura. Roar! The land god roared. His voice was like thunder, shaking the entire godless continent. He was filled with resentment, and had nowhere to vent his anger. His divine sense spread all over the world, searching for traces of Jiang Chen and Mu Xingyun. However, it was a pity that Jiang Chen and Mu Xingyun both had their own means. Even the gods on land couldn't find them. Bang! All of a sudden, a muffled thud rang out. Someone had taken advantage of the fact that the land god's divine will had weakened his defenses to sneak up on him. Then, a purple palm fell and slapped the back of the land god's head. Another sneak attack. If I had killed you earlier, things wouldn't have turned out this way. At this moment, Lin Langwentian's eyes narrowed. After she succeeded in her attack, she immediately escaped into the void and ran back into the chaos. I'm going to kill you! On this day, the land god exploded with anger. In a single day, he had been plotted against 3 times in a row. Twice on the back of his head, and once on the top of his head. What the F***ck? What are you playing at? Do you really think that the land god is a fake? I can't kill you, but where are your family, friends, and brothers? The land god roared and used his avatar. However, Mu Xingyan was alone. He did not have any family or friends, let alone brothers. Lin Langwentian was not worried at all. The entire martial pavilion had been teleported to the Eternal City, and now he was the only one left on the godless continent. The only one who still had family and friends was Jiang Chen. However, Mu Yud was already prepared in that small world. He shamelessly used his divine ability, and moved the small world to the side of the heavenly temple. Old man, take care of him. Mu Yud chuckled. He shouldn't dare to behave atrociously in this place, right? You underestimate him. Taoist Heavenspan sighed. He knows that I can't make a move. But he still has to give you face, right? Mu Yud said, but he was nervous. Just as Taoist Heavenspan said, the land god of the sacred clan clearly knew that Taoist Heavenspan could not make a move, so why would he be afraid of Taoist Heavenspan? Moreover, the land god was burning with anger now. How could he care about this? Sure enough, it only took half a day for the land god of the sacred clan to arrive here. Standing outside the heavenly temple, he stopped for a moment and said in a deep voice, Taoist Heavenspan, if I make a move, will you stop me? You already know the answer. Taoist Heavenspan said softly. If I could make a move, you would be dead already. Ha! That's great! The land god laughed wildly and split open the small world with his palm. In the next moment, everyone from the Qianzuan sect and the Jiang family was exposed in front of the land god. He sneered. Jiangchen, you ran away, but what about these people? You have to be responsible for your actions. Pay with your blood. How dare you? Run! At this moment, Nian Chang'e, Mu Yud, Jianglu, Wakako, and the others stood in front of the people. Bai Jiangye, the patriarch of the Nailan family, and the patriarch of the Jiang family all made a move. They used a large-scale teleportation array to send many people away. However, in the hands of the land god, the teleportation array was nothing. He just waved his hand, and the void exploded. Those who were still on the teleportation array were annihilated in the void. Jiangchen! If you come, I'll let them go. If you don't, you'll have to collect their corpses. The land god roared. He knew that Jiangchen must have heard him. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.